You are all that I ever need. What's going on, yeah? Welcome back to the Onyx Report, Black Masculinist news for the day. Hope everybody is well. Oh my goodness. What you say, Anderson? I didn't understand that. You might have to text it to me. Anyway, good to see you guys in here. Like, share, subscribe, join, and donate. Support the channel if you will. Let me see. I'm hoping there's not any sound problems going on. Okay. Let's see. So let me see what's going on. We got Danny Collins in here. Welcome to the Onyx Brotherhood. Hope you're well. Good brother Artisan. Donnie, what's going on? What's up, Brandon? What else we got here? Max Soul. Alfredo. Brother Malika. Now, see, y'all got to know that this show is being done at the request of Brother Malika on Artisan MC's weekly Sunday show. So, yeah, man. I was asked very formally for my thoughts on Thor, and so I went yesterday to go see it. I've heard a number of things about it, but I hadn't watched a whole lot. So we'll get into it, and I will definitely invite people up to talk about it. Queen Kalila, what's going on? We got Ron in here. Bobby, what's up? Electrician 480, what's going on? Ghetto User, what's happening? Soul Vanguard. Mr. Shug, we got Wrench Turner. Christopher, what's up? Pragmatic Enigma, what's going on? Nah, I'm like, I didn't give you that. AB Media, what's going on, man? Good to see you. Officer Faulkner, what's the word? You know, yeah, man. This was. Y'all had me sitting in the theater like, what the fuck? What am I watching? Oh my goodness. I hope I remember to get to everything I'm meant to get to. It's just, it's a lot going on in this piece. It's a lot going on. So like I said, I'm gonna invite some people up. Y'all can help me. Is my audio messed up? Let me see. Are you guys having trouble hearing me? Let me know now. If there's a problem with the audio, please put it in there and let me know in the comment section, because we are broadcasting across Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. So you guys let me know. Mrs. Sunkiss said it's good. Somebody said my mic is low. Okay. Sounds mono. Okay, let me check something. Okay, is that any better? Says the sound is off. So does that sound any better right there? You couldn't hear the intro music at all? Yeah, okay. Yeah, man. It's always a problem. All right, okay. So you couldn't hear the intro music. Can you guys hear me now? Okay. Yeah, my mic is plugged in. Oh shit! All right, hold on. Okay, is that any better? Okay, can you guys hear me okay? Somebody let me know if the sound is any better now. Okay, I'm getting much better. All right. Looks like StreamYard eliminated some of my sound settings, so I do apologize. Hopefully that will stay better. All right, so let's get into this. So obviously we're dealing with Thor, Love and Thunder. This is Thor 4. I have watched all 4 of these films, and I probably do so masochistically hoping that they will get better. And they are not. they are not. And they are promising, it appears, a Thor 5. I think they're depending on how well this does. To my understanding, it's done 140 million already, but I may be off on that. That was something I kind of heard somewhere. And of course, it's going to do okay to a certain extent because of the the gimmicks used, so to speak. People are enamored with the female Thor. Enigma said, Thor 4 Rainbow Bright. Oh man, I gotta remember that one. Rainbow Bright. Oh man, Artisan and Malika, I'm telling you, man, I wanted to get up and leave. There's a few times, but let me just start out by saying I don't like Taika Waititi's work, especially in regard to Thor. I'm just gonna get that out up front. I don't like his work. I never liked his work. I didn't like the last one he did, Ragnarok, and that's mainly because I'm a comic book reader. I'm a 40 plus year comic book reader. So when I read Avengers Disassembled, Thor, when he transcends, that was an excellent book, an absolutely excellent book. Crispus, appreciate that Cash App. Y'all like, share, subscribe, join, and donate. Support the stream if you will. Please make sure you do that. At least hit the like button. It's free. You can also go to Patreon, become a member and a supporter of both the Onyx Report and the Institute for Black Male Studies. Anyway, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, not a fan of Taika Waititi's work.
I don't like, projects that make a mockery of manhood and masculinity. I don't. And I think that's partially as a black male growing up in an environment where I saw the need for true masculinity. I saw the need for men who are in a position to help. I don't take that stuff lightly. So when I come across projects that enjoy making a mockery of men, you've already lost my attention. To me, Waititi is he's the contemporary Joel Schumacher. And if you're not clear, Joel Schumacher made a number of the Batman movies in the 1990s, and I couldn't stand those movies then. I think I actually might have walked out on Batman and Robin. I was in a theater. I think I was in Philly at that point. But I don't do well with mockeries of men, mockeries of manhood, mockeries of male sacrifice, which is what heroism is really, about. It usually comes down to male sacrifice. I do not handle that well in terms of that. Now, I do have a special guest that I'm gonna bring up in here, and my boy has a show, and I'm not sure what time his show is, so I'm gonna bring him in a little early to talk about a few elements in relation to this film. I want to give him time to do his thing. Appreciate that, ghetto user. Appreciate that support. But I just want to start out by saying Waititi's work, I don't like his interpretation of Thor. I don't like his dismissal of masculinity. I don't like his dismissal of the heroic sacrifice in a particular way. And I don't want to laugh at Thor. Now, Chris Hemsworth seems to like comedy. And he's good at it. He's funny. I don't mind the occasional joke, and I wouldn't have a problem with that. But I don't want to see a whole movie of that shit. I didn't want to see it with Ragnarok. Now, I'll be clear. I preferred the first movie. I wasn't the greatest fan of Dark World, but I appreciated the attempt. I thought it could have been done better. I didn't really, the Dark Elves, eh, not necessarily the enemy I wanted to see. I mean, I'm still waiting to see Mangog. You know what I'm saying? I want to see, some of the enemies that really threaten Thor. I was never impressed with the Dark Elves myself. So that was probably why Dark World didn't appeal to me as much. I didn't think it was as much of a threat as it should have been. But by the time we got to Ragnarok, I was disgusted. And I'm pretty sure I did a review of that when that came out. So, when I found out Waititi was doing another one, I already wasn't impressed. And it was, even before they announced it, I knew he was going to jump at the chance to do Lady Thor or the Mighty Thor. We got to get into that bullshit. Kareem, appreciate that support. But that's the first thing. Right, Henry. Nipplegate, Batman and Robin, absolutely. Wasn't really feeling that. Um, but I think, Chris Helmsworth has the look, he's got the physique, there's a lot of potential with Thor. I always thought was unmet. Matter of fact, I tended to like Thor better when he was appearing in like the Avengers movies than I seem to like him in his own series, except for the first one. I thought that was a decent introduction, to Thor. And but since then, this whole idea of mocking Thor, I never liked. I used to read Thor in the 1980s when Walt Simonson was doing the art. Thor was, man, he was a hero's hero. You know what I mean? I always preferred that take on Thor. So this whole mocking of heroism, mocking of men, and mocking of Thor is never something I like. Okay, Chris is saying my audio is still low. I don't know what to do about that. You guys got to let me know if it's okay or not. I heard it was fine. Now I'm hearing otherwise. So did it go down? What's up, Green Gorilla? Good to see you, man. So anyway, but yeah, so Waititi's the new Joel Schumacher, and I'm not impressed with his work. The way he likes to play with gender roles, that all of that. I know that's all in fashion. Okay, you guys are saying the sound is good. Okay, appreciate that. Yeah, I don't like that. I prefer the Walt Simonson era. I prefer the Thor Avengers disassembled. I wanted to see that Thor. I wanted to see a Thor. I understand the importance of the Thor disassembled storyline. He actually surpasses Odin. He surpasses Odin because Odin made particular sacrifices to reach his level of godhood. Now that came with a healthy dose of what he inherited power-wise from Bor, his father. But Thor actually had to go further and sacrifice more. So Odin sacrificed an eye. Thor had to sacrifice both eyes. Odin was I think he had to hang a certain number of days. Thor had to go further. So he sacrificed more, and he actually surpassed Odin's power and wisdom. I love that telling. That's what I wanted to see in the films. I wanted to see godhood taken seriously as in terms of dealing with potential, divine potential, and what that can mean. Waititi tried to play with that, but I don't think he understood the concepts well enough to, so it all just became a dismissive joke. And I hated the loss of that opportunity to explore that element. Now, being who I am, when they mentioned the Egyptian gods at a certain point, I wanted to see them. And Thor actually mentioned one of them at a particular point, and then when they showed the gods, I didn't see any of that. So those kind of missed opportunities really kind of pissed me off on a certain level. But let me bring my boy in for a quick moment, because I want to give him his time before he has to go. Brother Marcus, what's up, man?
What's going on? Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. How you doing, man?
Okay. Yeah, just still, I'm looking at the little screen, so I'm still trying to get my visuals correct here. But what's going on, man? Yeah, I've been listening to you for the past few minutes, and I haven't seen the film yet.
But that's okay, because you're here for a very specific reason, and I think what you have to contribute definitely is part of this analysis. Shout out to AKs and Curtains. He's definitely right. Rune King Thor is probably one of my favorite versions. Shout out to J3 for the support. Appreciate that. But so while I have you here, I will pull up one of the pages you sent me.
Right.
Because I think it's important to what I want to talk about. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and you can tell us a little bit about what we're looking at. So go ahead. You see that?
Yeah, I see it.
All right. So tell us about this.
Okay, so this is something that we all got, like guys who are in this industry, right? I go to a lot of film related events, and the SAG after union has their booth. There's different unions. There's a union for television. I think I sent you something for that also, but this is the SAG after. I think we may have touched on this before, but this one in particular is for moderate, low budget project agreements. Let me put my phone on silent here. But basically it says that a minimum of 50% of the total speaking roles and 50% minimum half of the total speaking roles and minimum of half the total days of employment are cast members, cast members or performers or part of the crew. With speaking roles from the 4 protected groups. Women is on top. Senior performers, 60 years older, performers with disabilities, people of color, Black, African American, Asian Pacific Islander, South Asian, Latino, Hispanic, Arab, Middle Eastern, Native American, and a minimum of 20% of the total days of employment is cast with performers who are people of color.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
So the reason I sent you this is, something I've touched on before. I think that the reason we're seeing this overload of Black woman shit is because it's easy to check 2 boxes. What I didn't send you, and I'm gonna send you in a second, is the diversity calculator.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So what you do is you enter your cast, your characters, and you enter whatever the protected group that they fall into, and how much of the film they're in, and that lets you know how much if you qualify for the incentive, and the incentive is tax breaks.
Okay.
So they give you incentive, I think, up to the first $15 million of the budget.
Okay.
So $15 million you get a tax break for having the diverse cast. And of course, when you have the there it is right there. The revised legislation expanded the program by applying a tax incentive to the first $15 million of all films and television productions in the United States.
Mhm.
All right. So basically, what you're getting, if I'm reading this correctly, let me read the last part. If the costs are incurred in economically depressed areas of the United States, the incentive can be applied to the first 20 million.
Mhm. So
Right.
basically, go
Hmm.
ahead. Yeah.
Now, basically, there's a financial incentive for productions to, hire uh people who are in the protected groups. And the reason why I mentioned the diversity calculator is because it's easier to reach eligibility when you check both boxes.
Right. So what we're seeing here is the same thing that happened really with affirmative action, where there's a kind of doubling down on when they do get to the black community on black women because they check multiple boxes,
Mhm.
and black men find themselves in a very different position and in terms of being regarded. And I want to bring up a post that I saw in my comment section, but you shared it from Hassani Davis. Shout out to
Mhm.
Hassani. And I think it definitely speaks to one of the aspects I wanted to get into in this film. Um, and it has to do with the representation of black men,
Mhm.
right? Especially in these Marvel films as of late. One of the issues we had, or I can definitely say, is the treatment of the black male image in these stories. And
Yeah.
but you went ahead and posted this, so you want to talk a little bit about this?
Okay, so basically what Hassani did, and I hope he's watching because I tagged him. Basically what he pointed out that in the Marvel MCU universe in particular, that men, black men's portrayals in these films, they never have like a love interest.
Right.
They never have a storyline or a story arc that's painting them as traditionally masculine. So as he says, Captain America has two girlfriends, Iron Man has a girlfriend, Thor has a girlfriend, Hawkeye has a wife, Vision is a robot and has a wife. He's a white robot, let's keep it real. Hulk has a girlfriend and gets romantic with Black Widow. Winter Soldier got a date and is a psychopath, but Rhodey / War Machine,
Right.
Falcon, and even Black Panther to a degree. Like these guys, their masculinity or there's lack of a romantic interest. The closest thing to come to it is actually Black Panther, but that they didn't have a current romantic relationship. And
First of
yeah,
all, that was absolutely horrible. So you
yeah,
got the first now again for a long-term comic book reader, I've been waiting, from damn near birth to see Black Panther in live action. We finally get to see him, and his
mhm,
ex-girl is playing him like he's bothering her.
right,
He's chasing her around the whole movie. She's dismissing him at every turn. I'm like, word, this is what y'all think a king goes through, let alone Black Panther.
right,
That's really what y'all think this is?
right. A
Okay,
king, right?
right.
Right. Imagine King Joffrey Joe Fur dealing with that.
Exactly. He's chasing an ex-girlfriend that really can't be bothered. And that's it.
Right.
The
Right.
whole movie.
Right.
So I'm yeah. So but this is very accurate. Now somebody else in the comments of this post mentioned was it Faustos? I never watched the Eternals, so I'm not gonna get that name right. And
Yeah.
but so you had a gay black male character,
Mm-hmm.
and then you also had one I mentioned, which comes from Thor 4. If you look at Heimdall, who, many people had issues with the fact that he was black,
Mm-hmm.
but I think because he was played by Idris Elba, that kind of quelled some of this because Elba is just that well known and well loved as an actor. But and he made sure as of this movie we saw that he had a black widow and a black son, right? So that's all interesting. But he's dead, right? So
Right.
he's gone. So he probably in this list was the only one that had somewhat of a functional relationship. But I find two things interesting. One, because he's an Asgardian, he more than likely didn't even identify as black. And two, even though he had a relationship and a marriage, as it says, he's dead.
But
So
did this play out on screen though?
well, he died during I think it might have been Infinity War.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then now look, I mentioned it in the title. I don't want to hear nothing. We doing spoilers. If you're not ready for spoilers, you might not want to be here.
Uh-oh.
There's plenty of other shows that don't do spoilers. They do spoiler-free reviews. I do them occasionally, but not today. We got a lot of bullshit to cover. And I'm going to bring people up in a moment. I hope some of the brothers will come up and we'll chop some of this up. But yeah, we're doing spoilers. So he's dead. And he's probably had the most functional relationship, but he's an Asgardian that probably doesn't know anything about blackness, and he's gone. So that adds to this list in a very particular way, and the perception of black men in the MCU. And I can't even limit it to the MCU because the DCU is not much better. I mean, all we have is Cyborg, and he doesn't even have a penis.
So I'll expand this though. I
Mhm.
think it's a Disney thing. Think about this, right? Even if you go into Star Wars, right? Because I added on to this Hassani post and I mentioned Lando Calrissian in Solo.
Right.
Then you got Finn in Star Wars, right?
Right. Asexual.
Right. Asexual character. And Boyega actually spoke out against that. Like, yo, why y'all play me? I was supposed to be like major, you know? And there's probably a couple more that are not coming across my mind, that character that's in what's her name? What the girl that's in the what you call this series? The was it the Obi-Wan Kenobi series? Like,
Ray. Wait, no,
right.
no, wait. What are you talking about?
No. I'm talking about the female black character. And this is going back to the other topic
Reva.
of giving enough. Yeah, giving what's her name? Ray something.
Reva, I think it's Reva or
Reva. I can imagine how much of an incentive they got to give a black woman that much screen time. But back to this, if anything under Feige, I mean, I don't know if because somebody pointed out to me that I guess the main exception would be Luke Cage. He would be an exception to this rule, but it still stands that this is something that is glaring, especially in the theatrical movies.
Right.
In the theatrical MCU, which Luke Cage is not a part of, this is a thing. Most of these black characters have they have no existences outside of whatever service that they're attributing to. I would say Heimdall and the other two guys, Falcon and Rhodey, they're kind of like sidekicks to main white characters.
Right. Yeah.
They're like stymie. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, like a stymie or I hate to say a buckwheat, but I'll say more of a stymie to these leading men, these leading white men characters.
No, I agree. I'm gonna delve in. So you want to tell people about your show because I'm gonna go ahead and delve into the rest of this.
Yeah. So I mean, after this, when the good doc is done, I say around 7:30, which is 10:30 Eastern time. I'm gonna touch on SYSBM 3. If I gotta push it back, you're gonna see how long your cast lasts. But I'm going live after the doc. We gonna touch on a few things relating to SYSBM because I think that a few of the points in the past few weeks we've seen a lot of things happen, and we've seen the Roe v. Wade, and I've seen guys react in a way that is troublesome to me.
Okay.
All right. So right. So I'll be on.
I appreciate it, man.
Most def, man.
All right, man.
Absolutely. Peace.
Okay. So I wanted to get that in because I thought what Marcus had to contribute, especially on the hiring process, was key. So we can actually kind of see that there's a rationale for the treatment of black men's image in these stories. And we can see what it is in terms of policy and in terms of investment from that regard. And in terms of the post that Hassani makes here, I think it's key as well, because it really kind of helps us put into context how black men are seen. A lot of this has to do with, I think, a fear of black male sexuality, to be honest with you, heterosexual black male sexuality, to be clear. I think there's a serious fear of that and a discomfort with that. And I think a lot of the film industry does not know how to address black male sexuality. So a lot of these men are either, asexual, or there's an implication that they're sexual beings, but that's about all you get. Now, I want to put something else into context. When I walked into the theater, they were going through the various advertisements. This was the first one that I saw, which gives you a kind of context for the film, or my experience. So this was a film they were advertising called Strange World, and in this particular exact clip right here, I guess the male on the right is the lead character. I don't know who the female is, but she was bigger, she was stronger, and she was kind of manhandling him. And this is supposed to be some kind of comedic cartoon, but this was the first thing I saw in the theater waiting for Thor. And it was very reminiscent of what I would get with Thor, right? Again, the trope that's most popular is the downplaying of manhood and masculinity. Manhood is reduced to jokes. It's reduced to a almost a caricature of itself, right? And this is what we get to see over and over again. Now, somebody pointed out that I misspelled Wahiti's name. I copied and pasted it so I wouldn't, but apparently I did a bad job of that. So my apologies. Anyway, so let me get to some of the things I saw. Right. So the Strange World thing was the first thing I saw, and we're gonna get to Gorr. I did read the various stories that Gorr participated in the Marvel Universe. I loved the character. Gorr in the comics was, really behind why Thor couldn't even lift his hammer for, a good period of time in the comic books. And of course, he was under the rise of the mighty Thor, which we know to be Jane Foster. Gorr had a lot to do with that. His war against the gods was written, it was brilliantly done, brilliantly illustrated. I love the character. I love the story. There's been a lot of talk about how he looked in the film and what people thought of it. I didn't care for it. I didn't really care for the way he looked. I didn't care for, I like the tentacles. I like the loss, the lack of a nose. Like, I like those elements of him that made him appear to be what he was. He was an alien. The white skin with the black, shadow effect, which we did see in the film in terms of that, but the way it kind of blended with his skin in the comics was interesting in and of itself. I wanted to see a little bit more of that here. So he's played by Christian Bale, who, as an actor, I really enjoy. I like Bale's work, and I didn't dislike his portrayal of Gorr, but I did think that they kind of half-assed on the special effects as far as Gorr himself. I wanted to see tentacles. I've already heard people, say, "Wow, we didn't even need tentacles." No, I would like to see more. I would like to see more evidence that the people creating these films bothered to read the fucking comics that they came from. Shout out to K-Ron. Appreciate that support. He says, Gorr looked like Powder with tattoos. I remember Powder. Yeah, he did look like Powder with tattoos. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't want to see that. I wanted to see the Gorr from the comics, or if you're going to embellish on a character from the comics, take it to another level. Do something new and creative with it. I didn't think this was new and creative. I thought all they did was paint his skin even whiter than it was, and they put like you said, a couple tattoos on it, and that was it. Wasn't impressive. And by the time you got to his daughter, she literally just had 4 lines on her forehead. I'm like, y'all are really half-assing this. It was really low level as far as I was concerned. So that said, I wasn't a fan of their portrayal of Gorr. Christian Bale as an actor, he is what he is. I wasn't disappointed in his acting, but sometimes to me, the special effects help you carry the character further. And I would have liked to see more of that. So I know some people didn't care. I definitely did. I didn't like the portrayal of the gods. Now, obviously, with this story, if you read what happened with Gorr, and there are plenty of reviews you can find on YouTube that cover it out of what the comics produced. Gorr is, of course, very frustrated about the lack of support from the gods in terms of his own life. And it makes perfect sense. It's an interesting story in and of itself to watch him go about killing gods to make a point. And I actually wanted to see that done on screen. I was glad they chose Gorr. I was excited when I first heard Christian Bale was going to play with it. And I thought that meant that they would take the character seriously, because you don't really bring on Christian Bale and then fuck it up. Like, you really don't bring him on to dismiss something. You know what I mean? You don't bring an actor like Christian Bale on to make fun of a whole genre. That's not the guy you bring for that. You know what I mean? A lot of people didn't like him in Batman. I thought he was great in Batman. I loved his portrayal. I loved his acting. But they didn't bring him in to play Batman to make fun of Batman. Why would you bring him in Gorr to make fun of the entire genre? I didn't particularly appreciate that. So that said, as far as the gods were concerned, I expected them to be petty at times. I expected them to be dismissive. That was part of the story. That didn't bother me. By the time you get to the primary city, where you see the gods coming together, it was a joke at that point. Now, I'm gonna bounce around a little bit. Like I said, I'm gonna bring y'all up, and we can get into more specific things as a group. I'm just gonna give you some of my thoughts on some of the basic elements of it. The depiction of Zeus. Now, Zeus, as portrayed by Russell Crowe. Again, I like Russell Crowe as an actor. I even understood why he played Zeus out of shape. Usually that means that someone didn't prepare, but it actually made sense. I got what he was doing with that. Didn't have a problem with it. I didn't even mind the fact that he played Zeus with a Greek accent. Actually, I rather like that part of it. And to be honest, as a side note, we're seeing images of Namor with the Aztec symbolism on him. I actually like that. I'm curious to see what they do with that. If they're suggesting there's a connection between Atlantis and the Aztecs or the Mayans. I don't remember if it was the Mayans. I think it was the Aztecs. But I like that. I'm curious to see where they go with it. There's a lot of potential there. So I didn't mind that they're adding culture to the gods. I did not mind that at all. I actually rather liked hearing Zeus with a Greek accent. I would have loved to have heard some of the Egyptian gods, or seen them for that matter. Right? I thought they just missed some golden opportunities there to play with that kind of element of it. So I didn't mind that part. But when Zeus is walking around holding his attire like a little skirt and scampering down the stairs, I was just like, are you serious? This is the first time we get to see Zeus, and y'all. But again, this is Taika, and I may have mispronounced his name. I don't mean. I'm actually not trying to disrespect his name, even though I don't like his work. That has nothing to do with this. I do respect people's names generally, even if I'm not the greatest at pronouncing them. But his portrayal here of Zeus just really bothered me. It was childish. It was simplistic. It was lowbrow, and I wanted to see something from Zeus more substantive, right? And this whole kind of playing of Zeus as scared. I tend to find Zeus as a character to be a little too arrogant to be scared, but I wasn't a fan of his portrayal of Zeus. I like the Greekness of Zeus. I even understood the out of shape component, but I didn't necessarily like, beyond that, the portrayal and dismissal of his character. All he was concerned about was orgies, and I'm just like, okay. And he was joking and performing, and like, that's not the Zeus I think of, especially out of the comics. Zeus in the comics is kind of an asshole, but he's an asshole that nobody really wants to mess with because he's so powerful. And yeah, they got that part of it, but there's a menace to Zeus that I thought they missed. He's revered as the god of gods in the movie, but in the comics, even his very depiction, the way his mannerisms are, you understand why he's treated as the god of gods. There's a menace to how he carries himself, being as powerful as he is. In this, they played him off as a joke, and I didn't really feel like the joke really landed. Now, again, we're dealing with Taika, so there's a lot of jokes to his shit. You know what I mean? Over and over again, the same kind of things. The screeching goats were getting on my nerves. They kept doing it over and over and over. And I was like, after the first time, it was okay, but they could have ended it there. They didn't have to keep going. And I've heard other people talk about it. I underestimated how annoying it was until I actually saw the film. So I thought that was kind of whatever. I tripped out on little things like Valkyrie and an Old Spice commercial. And it took me to the actual Old Spice commercials. This is the first time in my lifetime that I can remember where I'm seeing specifically Black women being used in advertisements for men's deodorant. And if you've seen the Old Spice commercials on television, you have y'all know what's the name of the comedian that plays in those commercials. He's actually funny. Dion Cole, I think his name is. And he's in these commercials, and he's this running series of commercials where he and his wife are fighting over his, Old Spice deodorant. And there was even a commercial with her mother, the wife's mother was played by Jennifer, and I'm blanking on her name, but yeah. So Dion is the comedian. He has a wife in there, and then at one point he has a mother. And I think there was another point where even Patti LaBelle shows up, if I remember correctly. But my point is, you had a series of Black women in these commercials all fighting over the opportunity. Yeah, Jennifer Lewis. Thanks, Pragmatic. So you had Patti LaBelle, you had Jennifer Lewis, and and Dion is crying about not being able to use his deodorant. And these Black women are fighting with him because they choose to use his men's deodorant. And so when you get that moment where Valkyrie is doing a Old Spice commercial, I'm like, this masculinization component with Black women in popular media is getting somewhere disgusting, really. And it's supposed to be cutting edge. And I said that this morning in my kind of, talk about the woman king. Right? Cutting edge with gender right now is to present particularly Black men who are considered by stereotype to be so hyper masculine and dangerous that we, in some veins, especially in regard to sexuality, are viewed as the benchmark for manhood. And so to have big, strong Black men diminished, considered weak, or made asexual, if not dismissed altogether sexually, dominated, exploited, bossed around, emasculated, that's actually considered, cutting edge, right? And to have Black women be perceived as the stereotype Black men have been accused of being for decades, that's considered cutting edge. So with the masculinization of women, you have the feminization or asexuality of men, of Black men. And this seems to count for some kind of gender narrative. Exactly. Buck breaking is really what we're dealing with. So even that little moment where you see Valkyrie in this Old Spice commercial thing, for me, it set off a number of different bells about different things. Now she is, of course, and we saw this in the last film where she becomes the king of Asgard. So you get a little prelude to the Woman King already through Tessa Thompson. Now Tessa has been on this trip for a minute. She's definitely one of the kind of people that loves to play these kind of characters, gender fluid, you know, all kinds of gestures toward lesbianism, all of that. I mean, that's become a standard ploy at this point. Matter of fact, I'm a little bit more surprised if I actually see a heterosexual woman attracted to a heterosexual man, especially if they're Black in a movie. So she's a Valkyrie, ergo she has to be a lesbian. But we know in the comics, Valkyrie actually had a thing with Thor. The interesting thing about it is, when you first see her as a character playing Valkyrie meet Thor, and of course she already knows the Hulk, it's already ridiculous. First of all, she's dismissive of Thor. Um, any implication that Thor might be of interest is kind of dismissed. She kind of dismisses him as a joke, although they had this little moment where he's naked at a particular point, and instead of going on with the plan that they had, Valkyrie sits back and starts, eating and watching, right? So both Valkyrie and Jane Foster Thor are staring at Thor naked. So there's still some kind of adoration for the masculine frame, even from this lesbian character. But for the most part, she plays Thor as a joke for the last couple movies. She's almost very dismissive of him altogether. right? And when she first meets him during Ragnarok, where they go to the planet where the Hulk is, she's tossing the Hulk around. I mean, just the power levels have just been ridiculously all over the place. She's tossing the Hulk around. She's dismissive of Thor. You know, she's trying to fight, and she's killing gods, and then carrying the bolt of Zeus. They really went extra. It really went extra, and it really got on my nerves in terms of that. So, to constantly see this kind of portrayal, of this idea of woman king, right? It plays to the most stereotypical aspects of what is dismissed as manhood. So it's interesting, right? What we hear about toxic masculinity, those kind of things are what many of these feminists are trying to play up as long as a woman is performing. But I think at no point do we actually get to what I call sacred masculinity, right? The man who's taking care of his family and spends 20 years working jobs that he may not even like to make sure his kids got food on the table. Those are the men I know. The men who would sacrifice themselves to protect their families. They're not represented in these films. Masculinity, this is what I mean when I say masculinity is dismissed as a joke. Heroism is the highest form of masculinity. And yet, it's dismissed. And so the sacrifices of men on a daily basis are mocked in turn when you mock the highest form of masculinity. It is a dismissal. It is a fuck you, if you will, to manhood. And that's what I see in these kind of depictions. Let's see. She sets up tourism on Asgard as a way to, I guess, raise revenue. She's setting up restaurants. And of course, she's not happy, right? Because at the end of the day, she still wants to be this warrior fighting on the battlefield. So again, we keep coming back to these whole issues, these same issues with, masculinity and its performance. And then we get to Jane. They finally, for the first time, give us an indication of what happened with Thor and Jane. I'm guessing after Thor: The Dark World. And the more he leans into being an Avenger, she leans into doing her work. I don't remember, was she a theoretical physicist or something like that? They're too busy for each other. Thor is kind of they keep playing Thor like this puppy that's following after somebody. It's ridiculous. This is nothing like the Thor I ever remember grew up reading, right? And so with that, he's following behind her, and we see indications of this even when you go watch the Avengers. Which one is it? It's it is the Avengers where they came, where Vision was born, right? Where they were fighting. All right, my memory is messing with me. Age of Ultron. So yeah, thank you, Pragmatic. So we see this in Age of Ultron. There's a party where he's sitting there kind of comparing Jane to Tony when Tony is, comparing his girl or whatever. But again, he's not acting as a god. He's not even really acting like a man. He's acting like a little boy. And that's one of the things I saw throughout the whole film, and it wasn't limited to Thor. A very immature approach to problem solving, self-definition, all of that. From Valkyrie to Thor to Jane, very childlike in their dealings with people, their dealings with situations, their confrontations of their main problems. Everything was childlike. And this I take back to Taika Waititi, just this childlike approach to problems, this childlike approach to everything. So Thor and Jane see each other for the first time, and they were like two teenagers. They didn't strike me as two adults, let alone anybody remotely representing some degree of godhood. As usual, Thor has been played like a little puppy following along after this girl, this mortal girl at that. And so they show you a little bit of their relationship, and they start to drift apart. And at one point, she leaves a note for him, and she leaves him. So by the time he sees her for the first time, they get into an argument about who left who, and she's gaslighting him. She's over here talking about, well, you actually left me. And it was absolutely ridiculous that this conversation has even been written. I'm like, what kind of writing is going into this? What exactly? This is the same Thor moping around Asgard because he can't see Jane, even though he's got Sif right there. And this is what he's doing it for? It was just ridiculously childish in that regard. Let me see. The whole idea, I never was comfortable with the idea of Jane as the mighty Thor. I always thought it was stupid. Maybe Lady Thor was less stupid, but realistically, she just should have had another name altogether. I didn't agree with the whole idea of her being Thor. I know a lot of people did. I never liked it. Didn't make sense to me. Thor was his birth name. It's not like he was Superman and he loses his power and someone else gets his powers and becomes Superman. That would kind of make more sense. His birth name was Thor. He shouldn't lose his name because you picked up his hammer. So I never liked that. And so they kept making these distinctions through the film, the mighty Thor versus Thor, and she kept demanding on being called that. And it was very reminiscent of what I'm seeing in general about white women grabbing for power, even symbolically in sci-fi material, trying to emulate masculinity as the sole definition of power. So first and foremost, you have what I consider to be an almost cultish fetish when it comes to womanhood and power. This desire to demonstrate strength. How many times have you heard women, almost as a calling card when talking about or even identifying themselves, they always have to include the moniker strong. But when you really start to look at their definition of strong, it's almost always a masculine definition. It's the only definition they seem to have. And I bared witness to demonstrations of strength that were not typically associated with masculinity, most particularly associated with femininity. Different types of strength that you don't hear about very often. And I don't get to see that very much because of this over dependence on strictly male definitions of strength or masculine oriented definitions of strength by feminists. And this film lauded all of that. So here you had this push for, instead of the disruption and disappearance of the patriarchy, white women's goal to usurp the patriarchy and become the patriarchs. Now, the difference between white women and black women in that sense is black women are already the patriarchs in the black community. As bolstered by policy, as bolstered by the state, they are in a position of authority that they've been assigned and paid to serve in. White women haven't achieved that yet. And that's one of their goals. They are in competition with their men, even though they still get married, even though they still step back when it's convenient to let their men sacrifice for them. They get to pick and choose when to represent certain types of masculine strength. Right? So in one vein, they laud black women's strength, which is why I was saying earlier when I talked about the Woman King, if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. They laud it, but they also put this masculinization of femininity mostly on black women. And they like to look at it from a distance, but they try to retain some elements of femininity. Black women are going for the gusto as far as that. So it's a whole different conversation. But even in this film, when you see this masculinization of power, this identification with womanhood and power by male standard as the only defining motion or only defining approach to how power is manifest, it's repetitive and it's kind of stupid on a particular level. It's very limited in its nuance and in its expression. It just reverses gender roles rather than actually exploring what exactly men and women bring to the table and how different they can be. And the hostility toward men that's so rampant in feminist culture is present here too, right? The first time Jane and Thor actually see each other, she technically throws her hammer almost directly at him. He has to move out of the way before the hammer actually does what it's supposed to do. I found it childish. Shout out to Joe Herb. He said Jane Foster did nothing to earn that power. Excellent point. Excellent point. She has the power because Thor loves her and kind of granted it to her, even though it was a bit unknowing on his part. She didn't do anything to earn it. She didn't even ask for his help. She didn't even call him to say this is what's going on. The only reason she goes to Asgard or New Asgard is for the hammer. Has nothing to do with him. He's not played as having any importance to Jane until the very last moments of the film. He gets a short glimpse of her feelings for him, but the majority of the film, she's playing him like a sucker the whole time, and it's really just ridiculously repetitive and annoying. He doesn't have any importance to her whatsoever. And again, This is the god of Asgard. Now, I'm one that never believed that he should have turned down the throne. That is not the Thor I saw in the comics. And if he did occasionally, that shit didn't last long. First thing he does in Ragnarok is give the throne over to Valkyrie. Now, I will say in the comics, one of the problems I had is he never inherited until very recently his full strength, which he had to get from Odin. And Odin had to die to pass it on. So I didn't like how powerless they played him in the comic books this last number of years. And truth be told, when he finally gets the full power, he uses it in one blast and has to go into the Odin sleep. And the reason I bring this up is I think across the comics and the films, in the last decade, they've had a difficult time actually appreciating manhood. And so I think even with characters like Thor, they've been toying with manhood, taking away his power, emasculating him in different ways. And we've seen that with a number of characters. And most importantly, like replacing them with women. So this is an article, for example, that kind of highlights this as it pertains to the MCU. You guys might find interesting. MCU's next Avengers could combine two different superhero teams. You can find this on CBR.com. Came out a day ago. And when you get down to it, what they're talking about, the two teams are the Young Avengers and A-Force. A-Force, as it says here, in the comics, A-Force, an all-female Avengers team that fought some unique cosmic enemies and faced challenges that even the original Avengers never faced early on. Right? So what they start talking about is how, even in the films and the various shows that are taking place on Disney Plus, right, they're replacing many of the male characters. Now, many of us who are geeks have known this for a while, but they're starting to talk about it. So it says right now, Kate Bishop and America Chavez have been firmly planted in the MCU as up-and-coming heroes. So American Chavez was introduced to the film. Appreciate that support, Brandon. Introduced to the film in Doctor Strange, right? In the last Doctor Strange movie. She comes in. So, I mean, this is not a character I ever really wanted to read. She comes from a magic lesbian land with two mothers. All right, whatever. The power set, just like the current Miss Marvel, is just kind of laughingly questionable. And yet these are being primed to be major heroes, I think, in the MCU, right? And the most consistent aspect to them is that they're mostly female, right? So here we go. So additionally, Cassie Lang will be returning soon. And with her now being a teenager, she could very well follow in her dad's footsteps as Stature. So Cassie Lang, is Ant-Man's daughter. Plus, with Riri Williams flying as Ironheart, she's supposed to be introduced in Black Panther 2. Kamala Khan in the Miss Marvel series. We're seeing a setup for a primarily female team, right? And they're saying the other team that they're hinting at is the Young Avengers. Some of those characters might be brought in as well. And this is all, kind of speculation as far as that. But I think what they're talking about in terms of the feminization of heroism in these series is real. And we've been seeing it in the comics for some years now. I mean, you had the female Thor, you had a female Wolverine. It's been a consistent trope across a lot of different platforms, a lot of different genres, and it's playing into this general idea that it's time to retire the masculine. And this is going on in pop culture as well. So this film, as has many others, plays to the idea of trying to attract new viewers, new watchers, new readers, most of which I would argue is kind of the Twitter crew, trying to bring them into comics. The problem is they don't seem to want to come, not in any serious numbers. Now, again, Thor's doing well, but for the most part, many of these films don't tend to do that well at all. I'm going to put out the invite to the stream so you can come up and participate in the discussion. But and Charles and Artisan, I hope you guys can come up, but I understand if you can't. It is what it is. But we're seeing this on a consistent basis, and it has to do with the kind of retiring of a certain type of masculinity that's being regarded as passé, and it's being, as Ron is pointing out, it's being replaced with women and LGBTs, right? That is considered the new standard of heroism. That is the new social good, meaning that it is considered an inherent good simply because you're either a woman or you identify as LGBT. If you are a male and you are masculine and you identify as male, what they call cis hetero, there's already something kind of wrong. There's already you're questioned. You don't have an inherent value, as it were. Bring up Officer Charles. What's going on with you, man? Oh, looks like we lost him. The link is in the chat. You guys can come up and participate. I'm just going to keep naming off some of the elements that stood out to me. Black Superman, you there? Can you hear us, Charles?
Woo!
Hey, what's up, man?
I haven't seen the movie yet, but I can promise you it's a film fest. But
It definitely is. When you see the female king of Asgard fighting off demons in a sweater, there's just something not serious about this.
I'm gonna say the same thing I said to you on Facebook. I was 17 when I joined the Army, 25 the police department. I've been an actual factual warrior for over 22 years, maybe even 23. I've never seen women do the hard lifting, nor have I seen them in the front line. See, when you put women, and I'm going to go to reality if you don't mind for a second, Doc. When you put women in combative situations, they fold. They always complain, why is it so hard? Why is this so? And I'm supposed to believe that literally a 1,500-year-old God is worried about a 30-year-old woman. And it's crazy because I look at these tropes of the woman king. People don't realize the history of the homie, currently known as Benin, that those women took heavy losses to the fact of the matter. They were beaten down and submitted. They were just somebody that they were not these noble warriors or these elite warriors. No, they were just more bodies to throw to the fire. And it's funny because every time I get in a conversation of a lot of women, and I've dated with most of the women I've dated were athletes. They were great athletes. Like one of my exes was 160 pounds, could bench press 260, which is impressive for a woman. But me, it wouldn't even make me sweat.
Well, let me also bring in. We got Pragmatic Prime and we got Malika. Let me kind of bring them into this. Pragmatic, what are your thoughts on this?
Hey, greetings, Dr. T. Can you hear me? Fine?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, and greetings, Charles and Malika.
Peace, brother.
Yeah,
So
it was just interesting. Like I saw the movie on Saturday, and like you bring up a good point as far as you don't see black males having relationships in the film. I mean, when they brought up Heimdall's son, I legit was waiting for them to say, "Oh, well, he goes by this pronoun" or something like that. I mean, they left that out of there. I don't know if they did that because he's a British black male, actor. But then also you go to the cutscene and then you see Heimdall still working the door to Valhalla. So it's like now a black man can't even get the day off in the afterlife. And
he's working the door at Valhalla.
It's like I'm dead and I'm still over here, being the bouncer and not letting people in, and
So all he needed was a bellhop's cap and to carry people's bags, and they would have been all right.
And then another thing too is that I went to the film by myself. I like seeing these movies by myself because it's like, you bring somebody with you, they're asking a ton of questions. Especially when I bring women with me because they're not into comic books. They're just going because it's an opportunity for them to get out of the house and to be social. So I wonder if there's a way to look at the ticket sales to see how many men are going by themselves versus women. Women don't typically want to do things by themselves. They want to go in groups.
Well, part of the problem is this genre, and I've been saying this since they did the female Ghostbusters movie, they're trying to appeal to women. They're really trying to monetize the identity politics that are rampant on college campuses and in pop culture and on Twitter. The problem is it hasn't so far really been translating consistently. And so, they're trying to appeal to these groups to bring them in. But you're right. Even when I was a kid, you've always had women that were into this, but it was never their thing. For guys, it was their thing.
let me back this up. I just came from BlurredCon, okay? Okay, you have a good amount of women who are into the geek and comic culture, but they're not. But some of them are not into it to the point. Now, I mean, probably the women at BlurredCon 100 times more than the average. Women do not support women. WNBA, anybody?
Yeah, you saw that trophy they gave out for the All-Star. The All-Star win at the WNBA. It was like a Pop Warner trophy.
It's sad because when you look at this, trying to go to women, you go woke, you go broke, and that's the traditional thing. When you start playing up, and see, I don't know if you saw my comment in the chat. The best we seen of Thor on the screen was the last 30 minutes of Infinity War and the first 30 minutes of Endgame. That's the best Thor ever was.
Yeah.
He was the most serious. He was the most dangerous. He wasn't taking no shit from anybody. He was out to kill Thanos, and that was his mission in life.
And that was unchecked, unapologetic masculinity. In this film, he's so insecure he can't decide what to wear, and he's comparing his freaking outfits with Jane.
Yeah.
Do you know what Thor traditionally is? He's the god of what?
Thunder and lightning.
And what else?
I don't know what.
Strength.
All right. Okay.
How the hell? Like, you got to really think about this, right? I could go toe to toe with the Hulk any day of the week, and that whole Valkyrie shit. I don't know if you see my comment about this. What sense would Thor give his throne up to a quitter of her duty?
Also, how did they let Valkyrie wield Zeus's lightning bolt?
That's what I'm saying.
Like, without any training, it reminds me of what you brought up about. I remember watching a review of Shang-Chi and how his friend was able to give the death blow with like 3 days of training and for archery, and then it's like Valkyrie gets the lightning bolt, and Thor goes back to Mjolnir, which is like you go back to your weapon from like your intro that's not even as strong as Stormbreaker,
and you give literally a little girl the bigger weapon.
Yeah,
and these were weapons that they described, or Thor described himself in Guardians of the Galaxy, right? In the Avengers Endgame movie, he's talking about this, or was it Infinity War? He's talking about these weapons that melt your mind because they're so powerful. And this little girl is running around with it like nothing, and I'm just like, what the hell?
And you brought up a good point too about the film. I mean, I think I heard somebody else say this. It might have been a different stream, but basically I heard that the final cut was 4 hours and they cut it down to 2 hours. And now you have the actors coming out saying that there were so many great scenes. Like, for instance, there's a scene with Christian Bale visiting the Egyptian gods. There's a scene with Christian Bale visiting the dwarf that built Stormbreaker.
Really?
There's a deleted scene I heard where he mutilates himself in the beginning scene when he meets his own god and he gets the necro sword. He mutilates himself. That's why he has like the scars and stuff to remove his religious markings. They cut all that out, and I think they cut a lot of that out because of they're trying to appease a female majority audience.
Well, and they're doing that too by changing genders and changing. I mean, look. So at one point, I could swear I remember Korg talking about having a mother. And all of a sudden now you just hold hands with another male. It was childlike. Here's another thing I don't know how many people caught when they were in Asgard. How many of you guys saw this piece here? Yeah, come on. So they introduced a character here that I actually hadn't seen that I could remember on screen. You guys remember Meek?
Oh, Meek, yeah.
So Meek, if you're familiar with the Hulk story, right, that goes along with this in terms of Planet Hulk, he was a kind of a sidekick to Hulk, and then he ended up kind of becoming Hulk's worst villain for a time period. But now all of a sudden he's a female who's taking notes at a meeting.
Yeah, Meek calls really sparked off the whole World War Hulk thing when you follow the line of it. So Meek calls World War Hulk to kind of come on the scene. So that's how I did that.
You know what? You know what I realize? Anything that is masculine with men, we work for. What you have to do. We all know the story of how Mjolnir comes about. and even how the original Stormbreaker, which was given to Beta Ray Bill, but even in the movie Endgame, that wasn't no easy task where Thor had to go help build that hammer. He actually had to tip over a dead star, pour all that hot molten star energy into that mold.
Right.
And then when Teenage Groot sacrifices his limb and creates the stem of it, the handle of it, the way that looked, I was like, damn. And you see Thor, he's surviving outer space in that molten hot, lava or that molten hot metal is on his body, and you can see it's burning him, and he's doing it. And remember, this is a guy in the previous movie, he just gets beat the hell up by Thanos and pushed in outer space.
Right.
Now, what cracks me up, and when that little girl when his daughter picks up the hammer, I said, that's the ultimate Mary Sueism. And that's just rubbing the proverbial balls in men's faces right there.
Right.
That's worse than little Leia knowing how to get up in that duct and figure out how to reroute the electrical systems in Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yes.
But then you see this, like how Jane does not, there's no real story of her getting the worthiness of this hammer.
Exactly.
And the thing is, it's like, oh, they can get, I never liked Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie.
No.
You know what she reminds me of? Anytime that you're in school, from either grade school, high school, junior high, college, when you're working, it's that snooty, upper crusted, stuck up chick that, even though that you're good and that you work hard, she's good, but she's just that she's the quintessential woman that Kevin Samuel said that's always going to be alone that has cats.
Yeah, she's definitely being typecasted that way in Westworld as well.
And
yeah.
The thing is, and she can't do that in the Creed movies because her husband is the heavyweight champion of the world.
Right. But
not till she knocks him out.
But she still gives him grief, though. Like there's
that one scene where he's trying to come back, and she says, "Well, you better get it together." And right there in the movie, I'm like, "What?"
Exactly. Right. And it's part of this idea that to be strong and heterosexual and in a relationship with a black man, you got to be,
extra.
You got to be extra. You got to be argumentative and combative. Like there were moments where I'm like, by the second movie for Creed, are these two? Do they even need to be together? She's annoying.
You know what, Doc? I'll say this. It's so bad that when you're in the fucking military or the police department and you have women challenge you, and I said, look, I want you to get your 4 favorite female officers, and I want you to challenge me to see who could do whatever in these streets. I'll be by myself against the 4 of you. Guess who's going to outdo you? I'll get more drugs. I'll get more guns. Hell, I'll even get in more fights than you.
But I
Let me put it to you this: and you really start to learn in business and in the real world. They're trying to prop up these women, and people say this doesn't affect the psyche. It really does. You see this emboldened attitude from women, and then you know what men say? Okay, I'm gonna step back and let you do it. Oh my God, why'd you let me do it? It's so hard. I thought you were my equal.
But there's a downplaying of male ability, male accomplishment, and maleness overall. I mean, even when you look at Heimdall's son, his name is Astrid.
Yeah, that's a woman's name.
So, now they technically say, oh, well, males and females have the name, but traditionally you generally see that with women. It's like, but these are these little things that they're putting in there on a regular basis that downplay masculinity.
But also that, I don't know if y'all call this Stormbreaker's behavior. Stormbreaker was that like a scorned girlfriend. Whenever Thor was talking about Mjolnir. Like, why would you feminize the source of power, that Stormbreaker, the thing that took the head of Thanos? The kids in the cage were talking about the lore of Stormbreaker. And one of the things you said was, oh, well, it has like a jealous. And matter of fact, they made it weak because it said they couldn't harvest the power of the Bifrost and direct it correctly. Right. The downplaying of his power. And the funny thing of it is, I saw it with my kids. I kind of I give my kids the disclaimer to rundown before we went in there to see it. And I actually had them. There's a brother, I forgot his name is, but he does a breakdown of comics. And I actually went through with my son and my daughter both to break down the whole God Butcher arc. So they understood the comic before seeing the movie, right?
Right.
And the day before, we saw the Minion movie. And it was hilarious because, as you mentioned about the behavior of, portrayal of Black women in a lot of these movies, even in the Minion movie, the most irritating and loudest character was the Black woman, right? And it was on 10.
There was a Black woman in Minions.
oh yeah.
It was something else playing in that movie.
Yeah,
what?
It was something else. Yeah, but yeah, in the
right woman.
Yeah, and the interesting is the Love and Thunder thing. It's like they went back and it's like it's two different Thors, right? Because when I read the comics growing up, right, Thor was the manly representation of Peter Parker in the sense that with great power comes great responsibility. Thor, if you follow the movie art, they try to make him he's irresponsible, high head, owing sins of the earth, learns his lesson, and it's like his character doesn't develop beyond that. It's like in this movie, it's like his character has regressed to being a childlike mind, but you lost an eye, you lost a mother, you lost your brother, you lost your father.
Yep.
And you going back to being this immature man. And he gains so much power and wisdom in the God Butcher arc because he understands even greater sacrifice.
Right.
There's so much lost potential with the development of Thor's character in this movie alone. You have how the building of the God bomb or how brutal Gorr truly was. There was no showing how he would slaughter the gods.
Wait. Look, I was looking forward to seeing Thors from different eras. 3 Thors coming together to fight Gorr.
Yes.
What I was looking forward to seeing. Young Thor, King Thor, and the Thor we know. Thor started treating Stormbreaker the way he treats Jane. He just baited to, this jealous girlfriend archetype. And it was just like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Artisan, help me out with this, man. This is you sent me to this. No, I can't say that. I want to blame you. Because I need someone.
Brother, two spots over sent you to this. The one with the hat on and Bob Marley in the background. He sent you to this.
Man, I was so and of course they did the typical trope where all the women in particular are smarter than Thor, right? So Valkyrie and Jane are talking about him like he's a 5-year-old while he's standing right there and he's sniffing after her like a little boy, and I'm just like, what the hell? Wow.
Well, I give you credit for going to see it. I didn't think you'd be happy with it. I wasn't happy with it, and I didn't think I was that pissed off till I started talking about it.
Exactly.
I totally missed the Old Spice thing. I forgot about that in the line of egregious stuff that I saw. I completely forgot about the Old Spice thing, and then you put the context on it because I don't watch commercials. I'm like,
I didn't even pick that up.
Yeah, that's fucked up because they had to. I saw the 2 lesbians that were in Asgard. They showed them for a hot second. Coupled up together like they were scared together. I was like, oh, that's what happens. But
reminded me of the end of the last Star Wars movie when they defeat the Empire, and all of a sudden all the rebels are lesbians.
All women, yeah. They all, it's like, where all the dudes go? Like it's just Pippin and chicks, right? Like, oh shit. Yeah, so it's a lot of layers to this. I talked about this a couple times today. My facilities manager, he's one of the ones who likes reviews and stuff like that and likes talking movies with me. And he said he got it on a good source not to watch it. He's going to wait till later. And I said, oh, you must have saw my video. So he didn't watch it. But there was another kid at work, my coworker. He saw it on Saturday. He said he liked it. And I immediately went to, what'd you like about it?
Yeah.
And he was stuck. He was like, well, I said, you didn't like shit. You didn't like anything. You just know you're supposed to say that. And I said, don't say goat.
Right.
Don't say goat. Like, I don't know. It's really weird with this movie that there was so much potential in the movie that it could have been so much more than the joke that it was made out to be. The parody, the second class story that it was put up to be for Thor. It was... The more I think about it, the more embarrassing it is. Like, dude, you actually put this out with some money. You said you had money behind this? Like,
exactly.
And I'm one to say I don't think Christian Bale did a good job in this at all. I don't. I
No,
really
that
don't.
was a
Christian
waste.
Bale worked in two spots. He worked in the beginning because he sold you on Gorr in the beginning, and then he kind of worked at the end where he sold you on why he was bringing his daughter back to life. All that shit in between there was him doing a parody of other people.
No,
And you barely saw him anyway, so how could you say, oh, he did an awesome job? At the beginning and the end?
yeah, probably.
What about, come on, man, no.
Probably. Yeah.
No, he didn't do a hell of a job. He phoned it in the rest of the way because he didn't need to be there.
But you know what else is cringeworthy though, brothers? When you see this big masculine man, where we know through comic lore and through other lore that he is a warrior god. Vikings are a warrior class. Asgardian gods are a warrior class. If anybody knows the history of Thor, he's supposed to die in Ragnarok when he kills Surtur.
Right.
When he kills Surtur, all Surtur's blood gushes out and Thor drowns in his blood. And he goes down as being a heroic hero, and that's the hero's death.
Wasn't it the world serpent he was supposed to
kill?
The
world serpent, because he's in the Midgard serpent. I'm sorry,
Midgard
that's what he fights.
Right.
He fights the Midgard serpent. I apologize for that. But when I see this, and when I saw Chris Hemsworth really training for this movie, I'm like, okay, good. Because they showed him working out. He got as big as ever as he got, but also they said he was also co-training to do the Hulk Hogan movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's supposed to be playing Hulk Hogan.
What?
Yes.
Wow, I didn't see that.
So when I see this of him, and I'm just like, automatically 3 people I thought of. Well, 4. I thought of my best friend, who's always going to give a very liberal play on it, but I thought of Artisan, and I thought of Dr. T, and I thought of Angry Man. And I just started laughing. And I'm like you guys, I'm twitching. And Artisan knows if I go see a movie early, I want to go see it. But when I see the emasculation, and I just saw Tessa Thompson with that face, and I saw how the way he's prodding against Jane, I'm like, you're the fucking god of thunder.
Right.
You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Superman simping after Lois Lane.
Yes.
Why are you simping after a common mortal? You can have anything. You saved the MCU universe from a tyrant. But now you're tripping over this woman. Okay, like Artisan said, she has an armor, but you use your power and ability to make armor because she has a better looking outfit. That's some bitch made shit. No,
it was massive insecurity. And that wasn't always the case, man. Like I remember, I don't know if you guys grew up watching those 1940s Superman shows.
With George Reeves.
George Reeves.
Yeah.
He wasn't simping after Lois, even though he was interested in her.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you go through Superman 1 with Christopher Reeve, I ain't gonna talk about 2 as far as that, but he gave up his powers for Lois. And
that's ultimate simp move, man. But
in the first one, not necessarily, but you don't have to be a simp to be with a woman, and that's one of the tropes that I'm seeing with this stuff now. There's constant deferring to the feminine that I have problems with. How the hell are you gonna have Stormbreaker working perfectly up until they get to Asgard? Now all of a sudden Jane has to tell him what to do with it, how to get the Stormbreaker to work. I'm like,
it's a full regression of the storyline. Because you even mentioned it before, Doc, when you said sacred masculinity. There was a scene like that in, I think it was the first Avengers, where Thor was like, I have to go and lay in this cave to try to figure out what to do, and he was having all those visions. And then he came back, and then that's when he attacked Thanos, but it was too little too late. But it's like now they're just kind of like, it's like every film now they're kind of just they're almost like trying to retell the story. He gets a little bit of power, and then it doesn't carry over into the next film. It's just kind of, it's like you're wasting. I understand that they're they have unlimited resources when it comes to a budget, and that anything they put out with a Marvel name on it will sell. And I think that's the reason why you get actors like Christian Bale, because it's kind of like, I mean, he did Batman, but now you're in a Marvel film, and it's like just one big joke. And it's like, you're Christian Bale. You've done great roles in.
But I take that. I can't help but take it back to the director. Because to me, and I felt the same about Joel Schumacher, and I said this before, and Val Kilmer. You get people that have talented actors in their stories, and they really piss away a good opportunity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's what I thought happened with Christian Bale. I like Christian Bale as an actor. I've enjoyed a number of different films he's done. He could have killed Gorr,
Mhm.
Could have killed him.
but between the script and the directing,
That
go ahead,
killed
Art.
It's like the
Dr.
agenda.
Yeah,
See,
that's
Dr. T, I blame you for this. I blame you having faith that they would have a good Thor movie.
Oh,
no.
I blame you. Like when they came out with Dark World, even the first Thor movie was it was watchable, but it was like, oh my god, really?
Those
Ragnarok, as I like to call it, Thor Fraggle Rock. That was the saddest, and I gotta go see this movie to give my honest take on it. And I'm like, none of this shit makes sense. None of it. Why would I give? I keep telling you, what sense does it make to make a person who quit their duty be on the throne when they messed up when they quit the duty to the throne? That's like,
Well, I'll give you one better for that, Charles. Once Thor comes back to Asgard when they're getting attacked by Gorr, he comes back to Asgard. None of the Asgardians are like, "Hey, the king, the king is here." They just treat him like he's just another regular dude out there.
Well, when they were after that
Like,
event,
wow,
though,
weird.
after that
wait a
event,
minute,
though, they were
artists.
in that.
They don't treat.
whoa, one at a time. One at a time.
No, just real quick. I was gonna say after that event though, when Tessa Thompson, when Valkyrie was trying to get control of the room, he did speak up and was like, "Hey," and then people finally listened. But it's still, why don't you? I mean, they're supposed to all be warriors, right?
Yeah, I wasn't talking about that scene. I was talking about in the battle.
Yeah,
in the battle while they were fighting.
Right.
Thor showed up right into the middle of the battle, and nobody gave a warrior's cheer for Thor showing up to help them out. The one who's an actual god, because Valkyrie is not a god.
Right.
Valkyries are not gods. Thor is the god, and he's the one who's supposed to be king. So he's the rightful king to let her sit on his throne for a while he went off with the Guardians.
And when he made his rallying speech,
he showed up. Nothing.
Yeah, he made his rallying speech after. Oh, sorry, my bad, Johnson, my bad.
Well, here's the thing, though. One of the problems I have is that I've read too many comics, so my expectation levels are high, even though I don't think they're high because the comics have been made. They're out there. I wanted to see the Asgard that floated over Broxton. Is that the name of the city?
Yes.
Kansas.
Yep.
I wanted to see that. Now, I understood when they first get to Earth, they're on this little, island or whatever. But at some point, Asgardian magic and technology, I want to see that in action. I want to see Broxton. I want to see it floating 7 feet above the ground. I want to see that level Thor. When Thor returns after Avengers disassemble, and you remember this, Artisan, when Thor returns to Earth, and he actually, one of the first things he ends up doing is handling Tony Stark because Tony Stark made a Thor clone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, he had it. His ass.
Yeah.
That was Thor. If you haven't seen it, you can find it on YouTube where they show you the actual pages from the comic.
And that's when Tony had to make the Thor god armor to fight Thor.
Yeah.
Oh no, this was even worse than that beating. I mean, he
broke him down physically and verbally.
Yes.
He said we could have words, and he said, "Remember the times we were training, and I let you beat me? Remember, hence I let you." He hit him with a unibeam, and Thor just stood there. That's all you got. All right, let me call the other thunder real quick and show you who's boss.
When you see Iron Man walking away, having to call for a ride because he can't fly, armor hanging off his body, that's the Thor I'm waiting to see. You know what I mean? I have not seen it yet. By the time they show you Thor in the City of the Gods, I forget what the city's called.
Omnipotent City.
Omnipotent City, thank you. They show you Thor, you get this moment where he's stripped naked and, the women are passing out. But then they show you these tattoos all over his back, and it looks like a 13-year-old boy who got a bunch of tattoos on all over. It just really stupid. Yeah. And then you got Zeus talking about chill, baby cake. What?
Yeah, I'll agree with you that I like Russell Crowe. I liked him playing big fat Greek Zeus. That was kind of fun, but at the same time, that curtsying down the steps and shit like that.
Come on, man.
I hated
I'm
that shit.
afraid I'm like, that's bullshit. Zeus is sitting at the same level as almost Odin, right? He right under Odin, but he's sitting at that same level. Number one, Thor ain't killing him. Number two, he ain't gonna be scared.
No.
And number three, he ain't gonna be there and be the fat goofball. Oh no, we just got to have the orgy and all the rest of this. I'm like, what the fuck am I
Or
watching?
have his own weapon used
What am I
against
watching?
him.
Yeah,
You know what? And that was another part that pissed me off. I said, "This is Maximus."
Yes.
I
Yeah.
said, "This is Maximus."
You know, if you're gonna have Zeus wearing an outfit like that, he's gonna wear it the way, you know, a Scottish man wears a kilt. He's not gonna treat it like a skirt.
Nope.
You ever seen you ever seen Scottish men wearing a kilt?
Yeah.
No, have you ever seen Greeks wearing their togas like that? They just, oh,
I haven't either. I haven't either. But what I'm
You
saying
guys ever
is,
remember a movie?
hold on one second.
Let him finish.
What I'm saying is, if you do ever run across somebody that is wearing something like that as out of their culture,
Mhm.
to make it an effeminate thing where they're what did you call it, curtsying down the stairs? Are you serious? Are you serious?
I rolled my eyes on that part. That's why I was
Me
trying to
too.
blank it from my memory till you recalled it. Like, yeah, that's right. Fucking
Go to Scotland and call somebody effeminate for wearing a skirt and watch what happens.
yeah, that's a nice. Tell a Scottishman that he has on a nice skirt.
See what I mean?
Get your ass curled.
You will be in the fight of your life.
Go ahead, Malika. I just had to get that out. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, brother. Did you guys ever see an old 80s movie, History of the World, Part 1, a Mel Brooks movie? And Dom DeLuise plays Caesar.
I don't recall it.
That's what Russell Crowe reminded me a little bit of. If you can look it up on YouTube.
Okay.
Artisan saw this.
Yeah.
Didn't Russell Crowe have shades of Dom DeLuise a little bit as Caesar? Because Caesar was acting effeminate.
I didn't make that connection, but now that you say it, I'm sitting there remembering that movie. Like, yeah, okay, yeah.
And it got me, and I'm like, I can understand Russell. He's a more older, but Russell Crowe's a man's man.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is, so is Chris Hemsworth. They're both Australian men. And I can understand it's Hollywood and a movie, but I'm like, dude, like for real?
See, this is my thing with this movie, and Dr. Tiasan talked about it. He touched on it when he was talking about it. Sitting at the shop yesterday, doing the stream and whatnot, what I see the whole time at the shop is people going to the theater, because I have a theater a couple doors down from me, right? And everything I'm seeing is a bunch of women going to see this movie. Right. So while we don't think it's a lot of geeks actually going to see it, a lot of women are going to see this movie. But what you know about the fan base for Thor movies is the big fan base is for Chris Hemsworth, because chicks like seeing Chris Hemsworth. They'll go to see a movie. Now, this movie sold itself in the trailer of him being butt ass naked.
Exactly. It's just
so
like
they were coming to the movie to see that. They didn't give a shit about the rest of the stuff. They just come to see him.
It's just like your boy in Aquaman. Women went to the theater.
Jason Momoa sells tickets.
Jason,
for women.
Yeah.
Well,
which is kind of funny.
Oh, sorry, Rob. You go.
No, I was gonna say it's just kind of funny because that's why I came on, was to make that point, is that they bait and switch you with the trailers. Marvel and Disney's been doing it. Look at Hawkeye. They show you the man and like the pseudo whatever masculinity or hero, and they switch you out with the woman hero, which doesn't make any sense. Because if they were being genuine and they were talking about feminism, they would just give you all women and see who shows up, which doesn't make any sense.
With the Hawkeye show, you kind of knew what was happening with that already.
Yeah, that's true.
It had to have the change off. But with this Thor specifically, with this movie specifically, that whole trailer sequence, they showed you that Thor was supposed to be going through some deeper understanding of who he is, to find his place, and all the rest of that, right? You get into the movie, that shit is played off in 2 minutes, like, oh, he was just joking.
That's right.
Moving on, let's be goofy. I'm like,
that kind of hurts me, because I just want to ask this question. Odin's dead, correct, in this timeline in the MCU, right?
Yes, he's dead.
The Odin force is supposed to go to him, right?
Right.
Supposed to go to Thor.
So he's supposed to be on equal footing with Zeus, right?
Right. Yes.
You know what?
Yes.
right there, I kind of wrote a better story than the last how many Marvel movies? So you're telling me, is it even worth to go see? Because I'm gonna be pissed off if I really get disappointed to see this
Well,
whole.
now they brought in. Now that they introduced Hercules, so what are they gonna do with him?
Oh my god! If they screw up Hercules, I'm mad.
To answer Charles' question, I'll tell you like I told Dr. T. I wasn't going to tell you not to go see it or to see it. You might want to see it because you're a comic fan. So you would have a different take on it because you've actually read this shit more than somebody who just watched the movies. You'll have a completely different take on it because you have your impression of what you like about Thor anyway, Charles. You do. So you watching it is going to be like, oh, what did they do? But you got to have your own impression, right?
I'm like this. From what it seems, and I'm going to gather the whole thing, and I actually watched the end credits when Zeus is talking to Hercules.
Yeah.
If they screw up Hercules, I'm done with Marvel forever. I swear to God, I'm not watching another damn Marvel movie.
You're going to have to wait a couple of years for that.
Get ready, though. Even in the comics, Hercules he's kind of a buffoon. He's not that bright, and he's bisexual. So how they play that in the movie, we've yet to see. But at the end of the day, I can.
Think they're going? You don't think they're going to lean away from that, do you?
But Doc, you know, like I know, Hercules is a problem.
Well, fighting is the problem. But one of the things I've noticed is they've not been consistent with people's power sets. When I was growing up, Hercules and Thor would routinely lose to the Hulk. In the movies, you got the Hulk who's damaged and his arm is jacked up. You got Valkyrie tossing him around in Ragnarok like it's nothing. You got Thor calling himself the mightiest of the strongest Avenger. I mean, I grew up
nobody just know that
in the 80s, and I remember when Stan Lee said Thor had 75% of the Hulk's power. I remember that. Thor would routinely get his ass whooped by the Hulk. The Hulk isn't even mentioned at this point.
No, because not this MCU Hulk, not the MCU Savage Hulk, and I say savage in quotes now because he ain't savage at all, but he just base level strong, so he's not getting any stronger. That Hulk in the MCU doesn't get stronger at all.
I bet you
and at this point, you don't even want to use his strength. So fuck it.
And I bet you they
just
write
big and green. He's the Jolly Green Giant for real.
I bet you they make She-Hulk the new or a stronger version of the regular Hulk now.
Of course, because that's what he's doing, prepping her up in the show. Because when they showed her trying to teach her how to use her powers. When that one wall with the saws like hit her and she got hurt, and he says we got to calm down the strength, and she's getting mad. No, calm down. And I was like, see, here we go.
And he runs from her.
Yeah,
because she's upset.
It seems that the agendas are driving the movies and the shows now. Not the directors, not the comics, not the artistic point of view. The agendas, whatever the agenda of the day is going to make these characters be what they want them to be to fit that agenda. Was all in Thor: Love and Thunder. It's just it's in so many ways. It's threaded throughout there, and I think for the forthcoming movies, it's going to be the same way. Every opportunity that they take to emasculate a man or depower a man or something of that degree, give more power to women, they're going to do it. Even if they introduced the Necro Sword, right, and that was was it Noel, the guy of the symbiotes, was it? Right, and like, what are they going to do with that? How's that going to go?
They're working it out with Sony.
Yeah, so I mean that's interesting Easter egg how that would go, but yeah, I just feel like it's going to be agendas that drive these movies. Unfortunately, it's going to take a lot of the thing. I mean, when the Black Panther 2 come out, what Shuri, is she be king of Wakanda now? Are they going to give her the title of king? Is that how we're going to go there? It's going to be interesting to see how it happens.
Probably so, but they keeping that. They're trying to keep it under wraps because they know everybody is really against this Shuri being the king in Wakanda. So they keep trying to keep it under wraps. But she ain't got hurt doing stunts just to be a background character. She, that's not what's happening. So
well,
she's probably going to be king, and have her go against Namor, but the rest of the stuff is going to be the woke shit with introducing all the rest of the female characters. That's why Riri Williams is there. They recruit her.
Well, the thing is, they did reshoots, but there's a movement right now to recast T'Challa. It has like 60,000 signatures.
That's been months ago.
Yeah, but it's still going. So it's like, I don't know if they like doing reshoots because
it don't fucking matter. It's not happening.
I also think too that I think the movies they've changed the dynamic too, where they changed the flow of creativity to where before it used to be the shows would flow into the movies. And I think it's the opposite now. I think now the movies are flowing into the shows. That's just my opinion, though.
I think you had to reverse the movies usually informed how the shows work. Like back in the beginning with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. would pick up right where movies left off. That's why I don't hate Thor the Dark World, because if you watch the Thor the Dark World and then watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it picked up right after that movie.
Yeah,
they're there cleaning up the mess in Europe after Thor the Dark World. So it fed into it, but then after Joss Whedon left Disney and stuff like that, or left Marvel, they got away from that. That was all the Perlmutter stuff where he wanted to break everything all up. So that's when Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. just went off on their own doing stuff, and Netflix was just off on their own doing stuff, and the movies was just doing stuff out of line. So they broke up continuity right there, and then just relied on the movie continuity, and then the movies start fucking up.
Yeah,
they're fucking up their own continuity, especially with this movie. It's like,
yeah, I'm glad I didn't go see it.
Well, one of the things that I noticed, there's a couple more observations I wanted to kind of put on the table, but one of the big ones was this trope of black women fighting white men that I've been seeing. If you've watched Lovecraft Country, you remember when you saw kind of the earliest depictions of the Dahomey Amazon, where they're fighting Civil War white men. And then you kind of fast forward a little bit and you get to Rey and Obi-Wan, and you see her fighting, Darth Vader. And then, of course, you get to Tessa Thompson, and she's fighting.
That was a fight?
Well, that's one of the interesting things about it. When you look at Reva, sorry, not Rey. Reva. You get to Reva fighting Darth Vader, and Valkyrie fighting Gorr. Both of them get ran through in the chest, and get up and walk away later like they just took a couple aspirins. I'm like, what the fuck?
Well, then sorry, Addison, you got it.
It'll be quick. That lends a little different light on Heimdall dying from having his sword jammed through his chest. Huh?
You see what I mean?
I was just gonna say,
Heimdall, you know what that was, Dr. T?
What's that?
Oh, Black Girl Magic.
Oh,
you joke, but yeah. That's what it is.
Didn't they learn from Thor? They should have went for the head.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they always show the men, hiding in place and gathering the crowds. Like Heimdall was running through caves, and Finn, I think in every Star Wars film, Finn was always running somewhere other than that one time he wanted to do the last stand in the second film in the new trilogy where the woman saved him. It's like,
oh boy, don't get me started. Qui-Gon Jinn dies from a saber to the gut, but somehow the Strag survives, and that wasn't even a fair fight. So Vader was toying with her.
It was a flesh wound, AB. It was a flesh wound.
Oh gosh,
he missed her vital organs.
I ain't never seen someone run through the chest and just get up and walk away like nothing. I'm like, no.
Me either. I've never seen them keep walking. But I'll tell you what I think it is, Dr. T. This whole idea of black women standing up and fighting against a white man and stuff like that. We've talked about this same idea before, but in different contexts when it comes down to the protests and stuff like that. That the black women keep floating this idea that black men are cowards and all the protests is actually done by them.
Yes.
So what you see is that whole swapping of the identity. That's why the black man is back there facilitating the escape of everybody else, and the black woman is up there fighting the white man, because they're trying to take that narrative that they're the ones who are always out there on the front lines of any protests or civil uprising to fight against the power structure, the white man. That wasn't what it was. It never was that. But at the same time, they want to put that idea in the white dude's head that we just as equal as you. we could stand toe to toe with you.
Yes,
It's
revisionist history.
Campaigning.
Which comes to fruition with the Woman King, right? That's what that really does.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to find that Time magazine cover we saw in 2020 with the black woman on the cover in protest. And
Oh
no
yeah, I
black
know what you're
males
talking about.
found. No
No
black
males
males
in the
to be
picture.
found. I think that's what we're looking at here.
Is that
Yeah, that's exactly what it
Tamika
is to
Mallory's
me.
colored cover or whatever?
I didn't hear you. What?
Was that Tamika Mallory's cover or something?
I'm not sure if it was her directly.
No, I know which one you're talking about with the black girl with her fist up, and it looked like some damn Russian Russian.
And they got the kid, the little black boy beside her.
Right.
No
Russian
father, but
propaganda
beside her.
poster.
I'm like this when it comes to the Russians when they came up to space. I went to your heaven and I seen no gods. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just. Some people think I'm sexist, but yet even the women who are the most feminist had to agree with me. You really think this shit is reality? I don't see none of you chicks going to Ukraine kicking some Russian ass right now.
No,
I don't see it. I'm sorry. It's every time I see this trope, and it's crazy because even my son complains about this at 14. Why don't you see any of the boys winning against the girls? Like I've never like even when he competed against girls, he like they don't win, they lose badly, and you really try to subvert young men's minds to believe this crap,
Right.
and it's really pathetic. Like you can't be good on your own just because you triumph. No, you got to try to do it at the embarrassment of a man.
Right.
You got to try to. And you don't even understand that you're getting so many incentives, so much help. It's not even a leg up, an entire damn ladder up. And you look at this whole thing about the whole Ray and like it's the Mary Sue and it kills a lot of good female characters when I remember watching the 80s Shiver with the Stone and the Sword. That's the actual episode where she lost the godlike power of Shira and she had to earn that power back.
Mm-hmm.
And just to help a friend. To help her friend from being captured by the horde, she had to go through perilous things. I'm like this. The material writes itself, but they're too lazy because of the agenda.
well, that's what I was saying after watching this, Charles. Is that it's just agenda overall. That's all it is. It's agenda overall. Forget your story, forget your heroes, forget your characters. It's all about the agenda over everything else. And as long as you get the agenda in the movie, then everybody will, clap like circus seals that you did a good job and it was the best thing ever. And for Dr. T, yeah, it's making $143 million, but it's still behind Doctor Strange. It's still way behind Doctor Strange. So it's the way they're spinning is like, oh, it made a bunch of money, but it's just made money in comparison to Ragnarok. That's it. But it ain't beating out shit.
But the question is going to be, does it make in terms of what they spent on it?
I would think it should since it looks so damn cheap.
Yeah, they rushed it too. I mean, the whole. I mean, it was like nonstop. There was no breaks as far as character development or anything like that, other than the opening scene with Christian Bale.
And that's where I was like, okay, that kind of gave you like a glimmer of hope. But then I said, no. They doing the 52 fake out. Then after that scene came out, I was like, here it comes. It was like you were just waiting for it to happen. But what pisses me off is the overdoing of the joking, the satire upon satire, like how like I liked in Thor Ragnarok where they were doing the satire within itself with the like well-known actors on Asgard.
Right.
But then when you see everybody else and you can see like when you see the city and I was like, oh, but then I'm thinking it reminds me of the Emerald City in the old Wiz 1970 Wiz. I'm like, okay. But then all of a sudden, you see the lightning bolt from Thor. I'm like, what is this BS? Is this a bad prop from the 70s or something like that? And it's like, it's making fun of of what something that should be cool, should be something great. And the way it's just like, oh, it's that typical, it's like that Monty Python funny shit where
Well,
it comes in and you know, I can understand it, but I didn't come to see this. I wanted to see Thor.
Exactly.
I wanted to see something that's gritty. I didn't want to see satirical, and I didn't want to see, and like Artisan was saying, it seems like they were making up a lot of their ad libs of their scenes, and I was just like, and it seemed like certain stuff when I looked at Tessa Thompson, and like she was like kind of walking through stuff, and just her being sitting there in the suit, and I'm like, really? And just like and I hate this terminology, the queen.
Yeah.
Or I mean, no, the king, the king woman, whatever. I said, how can she be? How can that is such an oxymoronic terminology? A woman cannot be a king, and a woman cannot be a queen if there's no king.
Now they're leading up that because that's what people want to see, right? Or at least the Twitter crowd they want to attract
that aren't even going to the movies.
That crowd never seems to generate the
never see a lot of movies.
And one of the wild things I saw was going back to Omnipotent City, right? We have an agenda until they be so woke they sleep. Now you had all the gods, right, in Omnipotent City. But one could be petty and say, why is Zeus leading Ra or the older gods, right? Why is that the case?
Right.
You know, why don't you show where that true power would lie, right? But then for Valkyrie to be like, okay, Thor, if you don't give us a signal, we gonna start busting heads. Who were you to say you're gonna be greater than the gods? You're not even a god. You mean to tell me you think you can go toe to toe with other gods? Like you have like the missing god. I can't quite pronounce the name, right? Who was sitting right in front of him. You have other great guys who's around who were older, as we know, than Zeus, right? So matter of fact, you have the Eternals sitting outside when they busted out the temple. Who were you to say you're going to do anything? Let me show you Celestials. Who are you to say you're going to be doing anything?
Look, if you, it's a simple question, K-Rod. Could you see Valkyrie trying to take on Odin?
Hell no.
No, you know good and well.
She should have sat her ass down.
Yeah,
exactly.
Not said nothing.
No, and I agree with you, K-Ron, because when I was looking at Omnipotent City, I'm expecting to see mechanics and engineering that are just incomprehensible. Like even in the comics, I don't know if they called it Omnipotent City in the comics. It was the engineering and the designing was divine level. It was ridiculous. It was off the chain. You get there in the movie and they're talking about orgies. I'm like, really? That's it? Really?
Well, look, this movie could have clearly been National Lampoon's Thor 4. Could have been that.
Yep.
Because that was the level of the humor that I was getting. It was juvenile humor. And that wasn't interesting to me. And that's what was pissing me off more than anything.
Right.
Because juvenile humor is funny to a point. It works with a Deadpool, but that's how they made Deadpool, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work for Thor because once again, I'm supposed to be seeing something serious. You got this dude supposedly called the God Butcher. You got him only killing one god, but he's still supposed to be the butcher. A butcher of what? Dialogue? Comedic relief? I'm not seeing anything butchered in this except Thor the character.
And then the constant deferring to women, where Thor says, "You made me worthy." You know what I mean?
That was an eye roll. That's another one of the things I put under dialogue being bullshit. Like,
there's a whole point where Thor risks the existence of all gods by walking away from Gorr to go hold Jane, and I'm just like,
I'm gonna be with the woman I love.
Right.
Do what she wants.
You about to kill off every god there is, and that's not the hero's journey. The hero doesn't, dismiss the journey, the goal of what he's doing at the last second over a girl. It doesn't.
No.
You got to follow through. The
hero would have let her die.
Yeah, he understands the consequence to wait at the moment. You just don't let him make that wish. You don't do that.
He would have heard that Yoda speech. If you believe what they fight for, then yes, let them go.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And even Jane sacrifices her own life to be heroic. Even though I thought that was also a kind of symbolic kind of gesture of Western women choosing power over love. but she still at least sacrifices herself. He gives up the sacrifice altogether and leaves Gorr with eternity. Like, really, that's the move you want to make?
Yeah, that's the move.
But you hit the nail right on the head, though, Doc, when you're talking about the hero's journey. First of all, when we're talking about the hero's journey, these are stories by different races and different tribes that have been told over eons for men to understanding what it is to be a man and to take that step into manhood.
Right.
And it trickles down for us. The reason why we are all on this panel and we love this and we love comic books because it displays the hero's journey.
Right.
This movie and all these other movies, especially the Star Wars movies, we're not seeing the hero's journey because you're dealing with woke culture that does not understand and they don't care about that.
Right.
What they're showing with women in dealing with this woke culture, they just want the acquisition of power because it's there. Men earn power. Men earn a certain, you have to take it and you have to earn it. Women are just taking it and they're doing it. And they're just acting laissez-faire and cavalier with it. And they're just taking it out. But when they realize, oh, I have to do something in the story that has to deal with a climactic battle, i.e. Jane giving herself up. Oh, that's great. No, it isn't. That's just a chick. That's just a bitch just dying and giving herself up to make you believe, oh, she did something heroic. She did not do anything to make a character arc to get to that.
Exactly.
We don't know anything. We don't see anything. We don't see a real big character arc for Rey to call herself Rey Skywalker.
Exactly.
And even to have...
No, but this is what's so key, Malika, about what you just said. This is what's so key about it. What you have is we've had this legacy of the hero's journey across many different cultures over thousands of years. When you get to this era of feminist storytelling, you're right. They don't care about the hero's journey. What they want to do is hold the hammer and hit the villain as hard as they can. They want to exemplify this powerful gesture, this powerful moment, to hold the lightsaber, to hold the hammer, and
call down the lightning.
Call down the light. They want the power, but they don't want what comes with it. They don't want the responsibility that comes with it. They don't want the sacrifice that comes with it. And sacrifice is one of the most consistent tropes about the hero's journey. Their interest in sacrifice is only symbolic at one stage of the process, but they don't want to go through the steps that lead to that, to even appreciating the power that you get through sacrifice along the journey.
You know what they'll sacrifice?
Well, they hold the hammer.
Sorry, you know what they'll sacrifice? They'll sacrifice the man for the power.
Exactly.
I would sacrifice the man for the power. They will even sacrifice their standing in their own femininity to get the power. They will even sacrifice their own humanity to get the power, i.e. play the bedwench or stab your own people in the back to get the power.
Yeah. I was even going to say too that they downplayed how to get into Valhalla. I mean, this is supposed to be like the it was just like, this is supposed to be like, you get there, you don't just die in battle to get there. A lot of people die in battle. They don't end up at the this afterlife for the greatest heroes of all time. And they kept on downplaying that.
That's the sticking part, is that it's for the greatest hero of Asgardian or Vikings to go to Valhalla. Jane Foster is not an Asgardian or Viking. And she doesn't even believe in
something. No, let's be clear.
So she shouldn't even be in Valhalla.
Valhalla is not heaven. Let's be clear about something. It is not the Judeo-Christian heaven.
No, it's not. Everybody don't get to go.
It's for warriors. They actually fight eternally in Valhalla. They have sex, they eat food, they fight. Does Jane look like somebody that wants to be fighting for eternity?
No.
Or having sex for it?
I mean, this is ridiculous. But
as a warrior sexual, I was offended by that.
We'll make up a term altogether.
As a warrior sexual, I'm offended by her going to Valhalla.
I can see Charles now coming up behind Hamdall like, whoa, brother. Can't just be letting anybody up in here.
Like, whoa. This bitch not getting none of my cognac.
But also start acting like a Karen outside. Why can't I get into Valhalla? Do you know who I am? I know Thor.
No, we don't.
But this is the thing. Across Thor movies, she kept playing Thor like such a sucker, man. It really bothered me, man. It really bothered me because it said a lot about what the perception of masculinity is, and the best they got is treating Thor like a 13-year-old having his first crush.
Yeah,
but they let microwave power.
You know what? It made it even the greatest emasculation. Even his weapon treated him like a punk.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I'm like, what? I was like, what pisses me off, the worst thing that you can do when you show a character that he can't do anything. He can't fumble around. So we're going to make him, like somebody said before, Thor was the Biff Tannen of MCU.
Oh.
And it was just like, okay, but he's like that one scene when they show him like with a little kid, he's running, then it shows him running again. It's like, what did you show that for? Yeah. And then like, you know,
so somebody else's kid can get a cameo in a movie.
Well, those were their kids. So I
know.
Thor's
somebody else's kid could get a cameo in a movie.
Yeah, like all their kids were in the movie. Like
okay, but I can understand that. All right, nepotism. All right, fine. But my thing is, I feel it because you're like, really, you got a guy. He's physically like, all right. All he was the beefcake in the movie. He was the dumb beefcake. They show him like, oh wow, he worked out. He's great. The women are fawning. Even like the two women are looking at him, but you could tell they're just looking at him like because they just would F him, but they still just see him as a piece of meat. And we just know him, oh, you're Thor. And the thing was, it was just like, oh, you're dumb enough to give me your title. And also you're dumb enough to come after me and you could give me, and I have your power. See, you're not worthy enough to be the king. You're not worthy enough to have the power of Thor. I wield it better than you. I'm a better ruler than you. All you are is just a spoiled, dumb, rich kid who's 1,500 years old, but you don't know how to do anything. But then it's like, wait a minute. There were 10 movies prior to this where he's kicking butt and taking names.
Right.
The first Avengers movie, he's kicking Shatari butt. The Avengers movie, the Avengers Ultron movie, he's the one that's taking down that doomsday machine, and Vision had to swoop in and save him. Thor was going to give up his life to take out that doomsday machine that was that was going to destroy the center of the earth. But Vision comes in and saves him.
Well, here's the thing, Malika. If you want to just get a real grown moment going on, something you said just triggered a memory. Could you see this version of Thor being any different than the character Chris Hemsworth played in that all-female Ghostbusters?
No.
Oh wow.
No.
Oh.
You see any similarities in that?
Oh yeah.
He was just the beefcake in that, the big dumb beefcake in that.
He was just a skinny beefcake with a short haircut.
The fur and the females and everything. It's the same. Now that I think about it, it's the same fucking portrayal.
Right.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. My problem was, I keep coming back to the depiction of godhood and the utter lack of imagination about what the gods were doing. I'm going to bring up Broxton again, because if you remember that storyline, first of all, most of the people in Asgard were considered gods, right? As a matter of fact, they had to be resurrected, right? After Ragnarok.
Yeah.
So Thor had to go around and find them and resurrect them because they were gods in human form. Mm-hmm. But when they moved to Broxton, is it Broxton? Is that where they were at Artisan? I forget the name of the city.
I forget the name of the city, but it was in Kansas. Yeah.
I'm gonna call it Broxton, but if I'm wrong, check me in the comments. When they moved there were stories that were really interesting. First of all, the stories of how each god had to be found and resurrected was incredibly interesting. Mm-hmm. But then they had this sub story where one of the women of Asgard falls in love with an everyday dude. You remember that story? Where I don't remember. I think he worked in like a diner or something. He was just a regular everyday dude, and he has this Asgardian goddess fall in love with him. And they had the most interesting relationship until, if I remember correctly, he was killed in Latveria. And she lost her mind at his death. There were so many opportunities to tell interesting stories with this, and it just turned into a farce of itself.
Well, Braxton, thank you, Marvin Evans, because I was forgetting to. Braxton is correct. Well, that's the thing about this. The more you start looking at this movie, the more people start talking about it, the more you see that it could have went a bunch of different ways. In this movie, and it been a better movie with any one of them. Just one of them introduced. You still could have had Thor there. You still could have had Jane Foster there. You probably could have had Gorr if you want to just keep him in it. I think Gorr was utterly wasted in this movie and didn't even need to be in it. It could have been just any old villain. Anybody else from Thor's pantheon could have been in there and thrown in there, and it didn't need to be Gorr. But everybody got such a hard on for getting close to Null, like they gonna do that any justice. It's like,
because Gorr was one of the more darker, very dark arc with how he was getting down.
Gorr is one of the newest villains introduced in Marvel in the last 5 years. That's why they want to get to it so fast. But that's people who heard about it online, read a little bit of the comic, and now they just all jonesing for, I just need Null. I just need Null. I just need Null. Shut the fuck up. Just let it be. It's going to be a while. They still doing stuff that's 20 years old just now. So come on.
But I never agreed with this whole thing of each director just gets to do whatever the hell they want to do with the story. I mean, there's no linkage to the source material, and I'm a bit of a purist in that. I don't want to see everybody's take on what they think should happen, especially when you have no appreciation for the source material in the first place. If you haven't read a comic book in 30 years, you don't even like the genre. I don't particularly want to see your interpretation of Gorr. I don't.
Well, that's my thing. Like, they got over on this with a lot of to me, a lot of bullshit. They just went cheap on this movie. That's all they did. I don't want to hear anything. You can say it, but I don't care. For my money, after seeing the movie and paying to see this goddamn thing, all they did was go cheap. Don't tell me, Gorr didn't need to not have a nose. Yes, the fuck he did need to not have a nose. He needs to look like Gorr from the comic. Otherwise, don't call him Gorr, call him or something else.
Yes.
You know, if you're not gonna make the character that character, then don't use the name. Do I need a Hulk running around but he can be bright blue? No, that'd be stupid. So no, they just went cheap.
I wanted tendrils in his head and everything.
Exactly. You know what's sad? We didn't even get Siege Thor. When they could have made Siege when Asgard was under attack. Good God. That Thor was nothing like Wu-Tang, nothing to fuck with.
Well, that's the thing, Charles. If I'm really gonna be hyped for a Thor movie involving Gorr, what do I actually want to see? I want to see Gorr actually killing a bunch of gods, so you see how badass he is. I want to actually see, even if you leave out the other two Thors from the comic, I want to see this one Thor get a power upgrade to fight Gorr.
Yes.
Because me reading the Gorr story, I wanted to see the Thor with the two hammers and the necro sword. That's what I wanted to see.
But you know, Artisan, man,
that's not what I would ever get, and I'm never gonna get it now. But
I think they fear showing men in truly powerful, especially in uncompromising masculinity. I'm seeing them lean away from that more and more, and dismiss it with this childish kind of representation. They don't want to. I want to see Thor at full power.
Yeah,
unchecked. Full. I mean, even in the comic books, you saw recently he finally receives the Odin Force. But the first time he uses it, he has to immediately go into Odin sleep.
Yeah.
They keep downplaying power as it relates to men and upplaying it only as it relates to women.
As he is right now in the comic book I just saw last week, that came out last week, Thor is gamma irradiated. It has Hulk powers on top of his own powers in the hammer.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So he is ridiculously fucking strong right now and kind of out of control. I want to see Thor actually going through some stuff, having some sacrifices, and getting upgrades the whole time. And like, I think it was Pragmatic was up here saying it. I said it Sunday. Look, all this was a regression of that character. He went back to being the same person he was in the first movie.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to the overall agenda, I mean, you kind of see the progression of just the MCU as far as the films and who they let direct, and how they're kind of getting to the point now where it's like, you have a set director for each character. For instance, like, say what you want about the first two Thor films, they were pretty serious. They wasn't too many jokes. They got to the point. It was a simple story. In each time from Thor 1 to Thor 2, his power level increased, his character arc increased, but it remained stagnant, and it regressed definitely in Ragnarok, and then into this film, and it only increased a little bit, not a little bit, but it made a huge jump during the Avenger films.
But
that was the most powerful you've seen him. Endgame.
Yeah.
Endgame was the most powerful you had seen him.
Yeah.
Two hammers, not having no conflict, having two hammers at the same time.
Exactly.
One wasn't upset because the other one was there.
And he was working with Captain America, tag teaming. That was the most powerful you've seen Thor. From that point on, he has just gone downhill, being the goofy fucker. He could have been a sidekick in this movie. Yeah.
The whole saying, if white men get a cold, black men have the flu, in as much as they're having difficulty showing men with power, when it comes to black men, we have to be non-existent and asexual. And I was talking about this in the earlier part of the show. You haven't seen a black male wielding power on any significant level in any of these films. Most of them can't even get a girlfriend, let alone anything else. And even if you just watch Thor 4 by itself, there's no black male present except for a dead Heimdall.
Yep. That was an interesting point that you were making on that, Dr. T, because then it plays into the fact that why is James Rhodes crippled in the MCU, but he wasn't crippled in the comic books. He's never crippled in the comics, right?
Right.
And then with looking at it like that, it gets into, James Rhodes and Captain Marvel is a couple. In the comics, that was a couple. And James Rhodes would take over as soon as Tony Stark died. So you got him you gave him a extra weakness now, which he's actually crippled and has no powers if he's not in the suit. Right. But then he still don't get nobody. He ain't got nobody. I was like, wow, that is interesting. I didn't even think about that. They didn't get none of these black characters except for Black Panther got no woman and no sights on ever having a woman.
Black Panther
Sam can't get a loan or a chick, huh?
Black Panther didn't even get the girl in his own damn movie.
No, she was still thinking about it.
This is a picture right here of James Rhodes and Captain
Carol
Marvel.
Danvers.
Carol Danvers.
And that ain't happening because Don Cheadle don't like
it. And Falcon, didn't they take away his wings at one point in the show? Or am I mistaken?
They got destroyed, but he got some new ones.
I thought there was a couple episodes where he was running around Europe or something like that with the Winter Soldier, and he was basically like had none of his equipment with him.
No, he didn't have his wings, but I got the hookup wings from Wakanda.
One thing I find interesting also is, I don't know if you gentlemen noticed as well.
Good picture, Jerome. Good picture.
It's not in comics, right? But it also kind of extends to, I guess, reality. Like no strong black hero left alive or left standing. I don't know if you brothers have seen lately, they going after the pillars will be Dr. King or Malcolm X. They're going after them and their integrity now, full assault, in every way they can. And I'm like, man, you don't want no black man standing anywhere, be in fiction or in reality.
That goes into what Dr. T was talking about with that whole thing with why the black women are taking on the white men and all this stuff.
Yeah.
On the outside, that's the same thing they're doing. They're trying to usurp that whole idea of what is black protest, black activism and stuff like that, and replace it and say that it was never men, it was always women.
Yeah.
Revisionist history.
Yeah, and the thing of it is, like, when the bill comes due, you do realize that a bill always comes due, and you've never paid historically the pound of flesh necessary. Were you a component? Absolutely, women were, not dismissing the rule at all. But you were the main ones paying that pound of flesh, and are you going to really willing to pay it when that time is due, or are you going to try to sacrifice your sons or others, to keep that standing?
And another thing too is that I think
that's a question answering itself right now in history. They're sacrificing their sons.
I think too they don't think about the strategic move that of men lying flat. I know Dr. T, you talked about that before, where you have a lot of guys like you can't act, like you get into these positions of power, you rewrite history, you take the charge in these protests, And then when you need reinforcements, where are your reinforcements at? Because you've pushed all the men away. And they don't, they don't see that nobody's.
Black men don't stand up for us.
And it's like,
but you know what, Pragmatic? It's not even that, brother. You're dealing with a group of people that cannot. If you're dealing, I'll put it to you this way, fictionally, and I'll put it to like, there's no way a group of female superheroes like the A-Force will last because there's too much estrogen and too much emotion there. It's not going to last. Stop. No, you need masculine energy to balance that out. I don't care who you have, the smartest or the strongest. It's not going to work. When you take a look at BLM, it imploded on itself because you had a bunch of women who were stealing and embezzling money, and they turned on each other. And it showed. When you're getting these women together, that they're going to come together, we're going to be, we're women and we can do this and we can show this. KK is destroying George Lucas's dream, the inside out.
And you know what? Even if she was destroying the dream and it resonated with people, that would be one thing. But it's not resonating.
Because you know why? Because here's the thing. When you have a man that creates something, he's creating something from his heart and his soul, and George Lucas created what we were talking about, the hero's journey. He took everything from different parts. He took parts from mythology, took parts from Judeo-Christianism. He took stuff from the samurai culture. He took stuff from the Brahmanic culture. He took everything from all different mythos, and he rolled it up and he put it into what became known as science fictional theater.
Oh, but hold on. He also studied under Jacob Campbell to do this.
Joseph Campbell.
Thank you. Joseph Campbell. And then business-wise, sacrificed to make sure his idea reached fruition in a way that
he wanted it to be.
He took risks.
He definitely took a risk because
there were opportunities for him to get those
risk with Kinder Toys.
Hold on, that's what I'm saying.
Hold on.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He took risks. He sacrificed. Now you tell me, what did KK sacrifice to get in her position, and how is that not unlike some of these hero figures we're looking at, who are replacing men without going through the hero's journey? What hero's journey did KK go through to be in a position to make these kind of decisions and just dismiss years worth of work?
No, it was like I pointed this out a couple weeks ago. The only reason she's CEO of Lucasfilm is because he gave it to her.
Exactly.
See that?
He signed off on her being that.
And how did he get it for that? Hold on. How did Jane get the hammer?
Thor just went and picked it up.
Thor did pillow. It was pillow talk.
Thor actually asked Mjolnir to protect her, and it became part of its enchantment. So in other words, just like with Lucas, there's a transitioning of power that men are extending to women as a sacrifice, but these women have not gone through a hero's journey. So what does that leave us with?
It leave us with a bunch of the hero knots. Shout out to Dr. Carey. I'm going to write a book called The Hero Knots. and it's called, you want to be the hero, but you don't want to take the struggle. You don't want to take the Herculean effort it takes to put yourself as the hero. Sometimes, if not most of the time, the hero has to leave what he loves the most to do what needs to be done. He has to sacrifice not just time, but sometimes family, sometimes friends, sometimes love. When do you see them sacrifice the stuff? And you know what? I'm going to say salute to Dr. T. I'm about to start my live stream in a few minutes talking about the exploits of BlairCon. God, just in a bit. But anyway.
Appreciate that, man. Y'all go check out Officer Charles. Y'all go check out Brother Marcus Aurelius, or Keep It 100. We're going to close this out here, but any final thoughts about this film from any of the four of you before we close it out?
It was a dumpster fire. It was a cinematic dumpster fire, and it was just a mashing in the face of people who love not just comic books or comic movies, just people that want to have a good story. You know, Taika Waititi, I like some of his comic stuff, but I agree he shouldn't touch this stuff. And I don't want him to really touch Star Wars.
No.
It's just a dumpster fire, and it's just like you're just shaking it. I'm just waiting for the next dumpster fire to happen, which is going to be Wakanda Forever.
Well, it is, but in the moment I'm in, it's going to take a lot to top making pancakes, arguing with a little girl over boots, picking up a hammer with makeup on it, and then taking the little girl into war after pancakes. I'm sorry. It's going to take a lot for me. It's going to take a lot for me.
Yeah, it's Eva said, Doc, when you read a lot of comics, you become a purist. You want to see how it's properly, you want to see, at least, if not exactly interpreted, at least stay true to the source material.
Right.
And even if one didn't follow the comics, just following the Thor movies, you can clearly see it. If you just follow the arc, it destroys itself. Really, it becomes really, as like I said, it's a dumpster fire. And I think if these agendas that keep driving it, it's not going to really look good for those who love to read comics, love to see that come alive on the big screen. And this narrative, this misandry really narrative, that's like I'm surprised no one paid no mind to it. You didn't see a black man except in the final scene, Heimdall. You didn't see a black man in this whole movie. You didn't see one. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's like a low-key canary in the coal mine to a certain degree if people that pay attention. Like, why didn't you see a brother in this movie in some form or fashion? And I think it's going to continue.
You just saw the closest thing you got was a single mother raised little boy who identified with Axl Rose and had a girl's name Astrid.
And then there's honor of that. His father is the Thor. Even they gave him the name Astrid. What did Thor say? That was the name your father gave you. So tell me your father gave you. I don't want that name. I want to be Axl. Well, your father who died for you gave you that name. Well, I don't want that name. Call me Axl. And what did Corey, the rock man who likes other rock men, say? Let him have what he wants. Really, that's what we're doing now. That's how it's going down. It's wild. It's wild. And like it's like, if Wakanda Forever going to have to do some real out the pocket stuff to top the foolishness that this movie put out.
I doubt it.
It's not, and actually, it won't take much for Wakanda to out-top this movie. Only difference I would see is that it won't be goofy.
Hold on, let me get pragmatic, and then I want to get Artisan last to give us his final closing thoughts.
First and foremost, thanks for having me up, Doc. I'm a huge fan. I was just gonna say, like, I've been watching these films, since they've come out. I'm probably the youngest person on the panel, but it's like you watch phase 1 and phase 2, and you see the individual films, and you say, all right, well, they're building up Iron Man. They're building up Thor. They're building up all the characters individually with solid films, solid stories and stuff. And then it makes you excited for the big team mashup, the Avenger films. But with this film, it was 2 hours long. It was super rushed. I mean, they just everything was just like, I mean, you guys are bringing up something that, like, I forgot happened, because it's like it was so rushed you couldn't really notice the details. Mm-hmm. And then I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, well, what are they rushing to? And typically in the past, you're already anxious to see the new Avenger film, but if these films are going to follow this type of pattern and this type of storytelling, it's like, you guys might as well take your time, because I don't think anybody's going to be that anxious to see the next Avenger film of A-Force and Young Avengers and whoever else is there, comic relief or whatever.
Right. Let me see. Lion, I apologize about not being able to get you in, but we're going to close out, so hopefully you'll come up next time. K-Ron, I'm going to take you down. Thanks for coming on, brother.
Appreciate it, Doc.
Let's see, brother Malika, I'm going to take you down as well, but I am going to thank you for making the request, even though it was a lot. You showed up to engage the conversation, and I appreciate that. You didn't make the request and then make me do all of this and disappear. So you can't.
No, the only person missing is Beastly Nerd, and I think he in the chat.
But it's much appreciated, man. I want to get Artisan to get a last word on his thoughts on this, and we'll close it out.
Well, I'm glad that you saw it. I wish it was better, but I'm glad that you saw it and actually pointed out some things that I didn't highlight it. One of the things I enjoy is that you see things a little bit differently than I do and from a different perspective. So I always like to hear that coming back at me because I know how I took the movie. I usually want to hear what somebody else thought about it because it gives me some more to think about. This movie could have been a lot better with a lot more stuff changed in it. I don't hate Taika Waititi. I think he did a shit job in this movie, but I don't hate Taika Waititi. If you ever watch What They Do in the Shadows, it's funny. It's comedy stuff. His original characters are funny. But this, somebody else's IP, no, he is no good for somebody else's IP.
No.
Now, what this movie does and earns in the box office doesn't mean anything because a bunch of crappy movies make a crap load of money. That don't mean anything to me. What is the audience reaction to this stuff?
Right.
Are they loving it or are they hating it?
Right.
And that's why I see the divide between comic book reading fans and just movie audiences where, well, it was Friday and it's Thor, it's MCU, so I'm going to see it. That group doesn't care, and that's fine. They don't have to care, thankfully. They don't know the material, thankfully. But people who do know the material even a little bit, you got to feel the side of your cheek and know you got slapped in the face. You got to know. You got to know. I mean, for me, in a 2-minute rant at work about this movie, I thought of a perfect ending for it. And the movie should have been, it could have kept the same name and everything, dropped Gorr out of it, and just ended instead of with a little girl running off with Stormbreaker. It could have been Thor and Beta Ray Bill, and him giving Stormbreaker to Beta Ray Bill, and having this be the origin of Beta Ray Bill showing up to replace him, instead of we got female Thor. Maybe we'll do a number 5 with the little girl and him. This is not Lone Wolf and Cub. I'm sick of Disney introducing kids into everything.
Right.
So for me, it's almost I really thought about it hard, and like I'm about 75% at my jumping off point with MCU and Disney owning these properties that I like. I really am. It's just really just becoming like way too much to fucking tolerate. Like I'll go back and read books. And just skip watching these movies altogether. But
I appreciate both of y'all. I'm gonna take y'all down.
Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you.
Y'all have a good one, man.
You too.
Oh, damn it! I'm sorry. What were you saying?
Watch something good. Watch The Man That Fell from Earth. Watch that.
I watched the last episode of The Boys. It wasn't as good as Herogasm, but it was good. So,
oh man,
at least got to watch that. I have been watching Miss Marvel. I actually don't mind. I actually appreciate. I like, I'm a cultural analyst, so I don't mind that they bring in different cultural elements. Young Muslim girl, I didn't mind that. The power thing, I got problems with. How they're gonna, kind of fold that into the rest of the MCU. You can already see it. Even the article I covered talked about this. But and I do like they changed certain things. She still has this thing for Captain Marvel, but this brown girl worshiping this blonde woman and wanting to be like her was always a problem for me, even in the comics. So they kind of didn't play that up as much in this live show.
Exactly.
I had that conversation with a customer in the shop about that. That I was really having a problem with the two tropes in Marvel right now. Is that the one black girl, Monica Rambeau, was idolizing this white girl as Captain Marvel, and then the next brown girl to show up, she idolizing Captain Marvel too. Exactly. I said, what are they saying? The Pakistani and the black chick all want to be a white woman, right?
Exactly. Well, notice that when the Pakistani's arguing with her family about should I get married or should I be this superhero feminist, you know what I mean? And you can clearly see what she's leaning toward. There's so much disrespect. And you find that happening repeatedly, not only amongst Western women, but even when they do court women from different cultures. The idea is you have to conform to this feminism, and this feminism prioritizes a woman, individual, and there's no communal connection. There's no emphasis on children or family. I mean, look at Valkyrie. and look at Jane. No mention about marriage, no mention about children, no mention about family, nothing.
Nope.
It's all
Because
about
you know why?
them being
That power
yes,
is the substitute for the man.
yes, absolutely.
And also when you have Monica Rambeau and when you have Kamala Khan, it's that myth of white womanhood that
Yes.
BGS talks about.
Yes.
It's that
Like her.
it's the idolization of that, but it's on an even higher level because she's a superhero.
Exactly.
She's an Avenger and she saved the world.
Exactly.
Remember Kamala Khan's mom said in the first episode, it says, I'm worried about you because you're idolizing these super people and you're not dealing with reality.
Yes.
That was the first time where some real talk that the mom had. Now I can understand that you're idolizing a hero, but she's idolizing this hero not because she's a hero, but also she's a white hero. And you can see the posters that's showing Captain Marvel as this great person, but it's also that angelic godlike, that Jesus character.
Yeah, that bullshit. That bullshit. Yeah, that's the only thing that bothers me about that, And to see it depicted on screen is different than just reading it in the comic. Because now it's overkill. Because anybody who read the comic know that, Carol Danvers came second to Monica Rambeau. Right? In introduction and being Captain Marvel, all that shit. She came second. She wasn't first. But in the MCU, they've made her first and made this little girl just idolizing her. It's like, oh, Jesus Christ. Like, I'm sick of seeing that trope.
The comic book version of Carol and the whole tie-in with Rogue from the X-Men is far more interesting to me than what they actually ended up doing in the MCU.
Oh, yes.
All right, fellas. I'm going to take y'all down. Y'all have a good one.
All right, brother. Peace out.
Peace. So, and one other thing on the cultural element, like I said this earlier, I like the fact that they introduced Zeus being a Greek with a Greek accent. I didn't mind that because one of the tropes we've seen in Western media for, Western movies for decades is this kind of British use of a British accent to highlight everything from evil to high-level intelligence. And so I didn't mind that they changed that up with Zeus. I rather like the gesture of that. And I want to see more culture. I mean, I always thought Thor should have an accent that's more reminiscent of the Viking culture he's supposed to hail from. I wouldn't mind that at all. I think, these are ideas that come out of human cultures. So I don't mind seeing them represented more. But Artisan brought up a question for me about how it should have ended. And I hadn't actually thought about that until now. And I'll be honest with you, I love those stories and Braxton so much. I wanted to, I think it kind of influenced my thought on how I wanted it to end. I wanted to see Thor make Asgard what it should be, using the Odin Force, or as was pointed out earlier in the comments, the Thor Force. I wanted to see him actually take Asgard into the sky and make it what it should have been. And the reason I want to see those kind of demonstrations is I think it's important for men and boys, and especially boys, to actually see, even if it's symbolic, and that's what sci-fi deals with, symbolism, right? To see the power of a sacred masculinity, what it can yield, its sacrificial nature for others, but the benefit and role it plays in community. So much of that is being downplayed that manhood is becoming synonymous with toxic masculinity, and the virtuous aspects of manhood are being given to other demographics as if men themselves have no place in this discussion and have nowhere to be. And the more you leave boys and men out, I was talking to a colleague a couple months ago about this, and she has grandkids, and she was talking about how much her granddaughter is being, kind of lifted up in these, with all of these pronouns and these various practices about gender. She's being lifted up and pedestalized, and people are kind of investing their hopes in what she'll be. Well, that little girl has a twin brother, and he's barely mentioned. He's barely talked about. He's barely referenced. And I'm looking at this from a distance, and I'm just kind of watching this, and I'm asking myself, what is the impact? And of course, I'm using this little girl and this little boy as a larger kind of reflection on a set of macro practices. But what happens when you put all your emphasis into the girls, and from policy to individual treatment in families, you downplay and dismiss the potential of the boys? What happens when you create film after film that downplays their existence, downplays their potential, tells them that they're not really relevant to the story, unless they can give you all kinds of complicated, nuanced pronouns. But if they're just heterosexual boys who have been the backbone of most societies, when you tell them they have no honorable place in society, what does that do? What does that leave you with? And I'm talking about this in a larger Western context, and I am damn sure talking about this in the Black community, where what we found in the last few years is the only place boys have that comes anything close to honorable is dying and having their stories told to bolster others, most particularly in grassroots movements, or at least what presents itself as grassroots. So that said, I wanted to see the highest level potential in males in movies, mainly because I want to inspire boys and men. And as a father who found very few examples in pop culture that my son could talk to with his friends about, that was a hard one. Because one of the things my son told me at the age of 13 is he had never seen a boy beat a girl at anything, or a man beat a woman for that matter, in media. And you're programming a generation of males, or multiple generations of males, in fact, to accept being less. And I think the cost of that is going to be more than people are going to want to pay. But that's just my thoughts about it. Let me see. I'm going to try and see if this works real quick. Let me try and see if I can get this going and play this for y'all real quick before I close it out.